If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 61. That day, when Natsuki got home from school, he saw Tenton standing blankly in the courtyard. So, she had already returned from her mission. Hearing the sound of the door opening, Tenton turned her head to glance at him, then suddenly threw herself into Natsuki's arms. She didn't cry or make a sound, just quietly stayed like that. "What's wrong?" Natsuki asked, heart aching a little. "Natsuki, my heart feels heavy," Tenton said in a soft voice. "What happened? Can you tell me?" Our mission this time was to wipe out a group of mountain bandits, and I killed someone for the first time." "What kind of bandits?" "They were scum. They killed so many villagers, including women and children. They really deserved to die. But when I saw the villagers hugging the corpses of their loved ones, crying like their world had collapsed, I couldn't stand it." "I see." Natsuki understood, but he didn't know how to comfort her with words. He could only hold her tightly, letting the warmth of his embrace speak for him. After a long while, Tenton finally calmed down. She seemed more spirited and even gave Natsuki a quick kiss. "Don't worry, I'm not that fragile. I knew from the moment I chose to become a ninja that I would have to go through these things. It's just, this is the first time I've truly felt how fragile life can be, and yet there are still people who trample on it without care." Seeing her recover, Natsuki finally let out a sigh of relief. He had genuinely been worried she'd develop a psychological scar. Thinking about it, she's only 12. Still just a child. To suddenly be exposed to death, to even be forced to take a life, it's not something you can easily brush off. And yet, Fugaku had dared to bring his 4-year-old son onto the battlefield. That's inhuman. All that learning to think like a Hokage from a young age. How could you not think about life and death when traumatized like that? Whatever others do, Natsuki didn't care. As long as Tenton was okay, that was all that mattered. "Oh, right, Guy-sensei asked about the time you passed out from pain. I told him you were overtraining. He said he'd teach you a lesson when he gets a chance," Tenton said suddenly. "Thanks to my most beloved girlfriend for covering for me," Natsuki replied with a wry smile. Secrets really were hard to keep. "So, Guy-sensei wants to see me tomorrow? Is it something important?" Tenton nodded. "Our class just came back from a mission, so we have 2 days off. Guy-sensei said that Kakashi-senpai is in the village lately, so he wants to take the opportunity to introduce you to. You're about to get your hands on the Hokage swordsmanship you've been dreaming about." "Oh? Tomorrow?" Natsuki's eyes lit up. Guy-sensei really kept his promises. That worked out. He had just been wondering how to improve next. If the Hokage style was within reach, whether Kakashi would be willing to teach him or not was another question. He'd just have to try. "Natsuki, could you tell me more about the Hokage style? Or rather, Hokage Sakumo-senpai?" Tenton's curiosity was finally let loose. She had wanted to ask for a while now, but between missions and training, she was always too tired when she got home. Now was the perfect time. Natsuki immediately recalled the story. Sakumo-senpai, well, his story's pretty tragic. He was once the captain of the ANBU directly under the Hokage. He often took on extremely dangerous missions. But he was unbelievably strong. S-rank missions were nothing for him. And that sword style of his made all the other villages tremble. The enemies, affectionately called him the White Fang of the Leaf. Affectionately? Tenton resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Her boyfriend definitely liked to exaggerate when telling stories. Ahem. Anyway, the Hokage swordsmanship is incredibly powerful. Back then, the White Fang's fame even surpassed the legendary Sunin. Some people even said that if he hadn't taken his own life, he might have become the 4th Hokage instead. What? He took his own life? But he was so strong. Why? Well, it's a complicated story. On one mission, he chose to save his comrades rather than complete the mission. But when he returned to the village, he was criticized. Even the comrade he saved blamed him. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore. That's awful. Tenton covered her mouth in disbelief. She couldn't understand how such a powerful person, someone who survived countless life and death missions, could end up taking his own life. Maybe that's what Natsuki meant by it's complicated. The reasons behind his suicide weren't something people today could easily understand. Still, she felt angry on his behalf. He gave up the mission to save a comrade. Sure, maybe he should have been criticized, but the one person who had no right to blame him was that very comrade. What kind of backstabber would do that? Maybe Sakumo-senpai felt betrayed. Maybe that's why he did it. Tenton's head hurt just thinking about it. It was too hard to understand. Don't dwell on it, Natsuki said. We don't know what things were like back then, and it's best not to speculate. Also, it's better not to spread this around. We're just talking about it between ourselves, all right? Tenton nodded, then thought of Kakashi. Then, what about Kakashi-senpai? How is he doing? Natsuki sighed. He was still young when it happened, so he was hit hard. He became obsessed with the idea that the mission was everything. When doing missions, he barely cared if his teammates got hurt or died. Nobody wanted to team up with him. If not for Guy-sensei being so persistent, Kakashi might have completely gone down the wrong path. Later on, something else happened, and Kakashi wasn't so extreme anymore. But I heard he accidentally broke Sakumo-senpai's sword, and after that, he never used the Hotaki style again. Tenton's eyes welled up. Kakashi-senpai, that's so sad, Hugh. No need to cry, Kakashi's already moved on. I think. Yet, he doesn't dwell on his father's death anymore. Thanks to Obito and Rin, he finally understood the importance of his comrades and came to accept his father's decision. But the fact that he never continued the Hotaki swordsmanship, such a waste. That's why Natsuki planned to inherit it himself. So, what's Kakashi-senpai like now? Tenton pressed. Kinda gloomy. He's in his 30s or 40s and still single. Always reading Make Out Paradise, with that dead fish stare. Honestly, he just lacks energy. Tenton, we're not getting involved, alright? Kakashi-senpai isn't someone we need to pity or save. Don't bring up what I said in front of him either. Natsuki. We have to find a way to inherit the Hotaki swordsmanship. Sure. That was my plan anyway. Natsuki sighed in relief. Telling stories was one thing, but he didn't want Tenton getting involved unnecessarily. Kakashi was a top-tier jonin. If even he couldn't sort himself out, who were they to try? Eventually, they'd run into Obito again. So, for now, there was no need to worry. Chapter 62. The next morning, Natsuki transformed into his adult appearance and went to the Shueisha bookstore to buy a deluxe edition set of Make Out Paradise. Though Kakashi probably already had a full collection at home, this was still the best gift Natsuki could think of. He figured Kakashi wouldn't reject it, probably. Tenton casually picked up a copy to flip through and immediately her face turned bright red. She quickly slammed the book shut. She glanced at Natsuki shyly and hesitated, Natsuki, if you have certain needs, you could just talk to me. You don't have to read these kinds of books. Natsuki realized she'd misunderstood and quickly explained, it's not for me. Didn't I say Kakashi-senpai likes this stuff? It's a gift. Besides, this series was written by Jiraiya-sama himself. It's a bestseller in the ninja world. Hey? One of the legendary Sunin, Jiraiya-sama wrote this. Tenton's eyes went wide. A legendary ninja wrote this kind of thing? That's so disappointing. Natsuki seized the moment. Jiraiya's a pervert, Tsunade's a gambling addict, and Orochimaru's a traitor. No further comment. So yeah, don't put too much faith in the Sunin. They're nowhere near as admirable as Sakumo-senpai. Also, Tenton, be careful. Jiraiya has a habit of peeping on women's bathhouses. Better avoid those places. What? Tenton stood frozen, clearly unable to accept this shocking revelation. Her once admired legendary Sunin, how could they be like this? Even Tsunade-sama was a gambler. Seeing the time, Natsuki and Tenton carried the deluxe Make Out Paradise set to the agreed training ground. Guy was already there doing one arm push ups. Yo! Natsuki! Tenton! You're here! Guy jumped up immediately, and with a serious face began lecturing Natsuki, I heard everything from Tenton. You pushed yourself too hard and passed out from the pain? That's no good at all. Let me teach you what proper training really means, blah blah blah, understand now? Passionate and youthful training never lies. Make sure you're careful from now on. Natsuki could only nod repeatedly. This was his first time realizing how talkative Guy really was. Tenton took the opportunity to glance around but didn't see anyone. She wondered if they were getting stood up. Guy-sensei, where's Kakashi-senpai? Oh, Kakashi? He's probably helping an old lady cross the street. Being late is normal for him, Guy answered like it was no big deal. What the heck? Helping old ladies cross the street? Sure, that's kind, but he's a ninja. Isn't punctuality important? Is this really what a top-tier ninja is like? Tenton couldn't help but complain. That's just how Kakashi is normally. When it comes to missions, though, he's never late. Even after that explanation, Tenton didn't seem convinced. She was starting to feel a little disillusioned with the village's ninja. First the Sunin, and now even the legendary copy ninja turned out to be like this. She had just pitted him yesterday after Natsuki's story, and now, maybe Sloppy really was the truth. Natsuki thought for a moment, then formed a hand seal and used the Sunin, telescope no jutsu, water style, telescope technique. A transparent water lens formed in front of him and above, creating a surveillance scope. Within a kilometer radius, everything became visible through the water lens. Soon, he spotted a man with one eye covered by a forehead protector and a face mask. It was Hitaki Kakashi. So that's Kakashi-senpai? Looks pretty cool, but that dead fish eye is real, Tenton gave her first impression honestly. Ha ha ha. Kakashi is super strong, he's my eternal rival. Our score is currently 40-39. Obviously, I'm winning. Guy said proudly, hands on his hips. Really? Tenton didn't quite buy it. Of course it's true. I'm totally better than Kakashi. Oi oi oi, Guy, stop lying to the kids. The real score is 38-39. And those 2 times we competed during lunch don't count. A lazy voice floated over, and Kakashi appeared with his hands in his pockets. He moved fast, much faster than expected. Kakashi's dead fish eye scanned past Tenton and landed on Natsuki. So you're the Natsuki guy's been talking about? That telescope technique of yours is pretty nice. Tenton's mouth opened slightly in surprise. She hadn't even noticed when Kakashi had arrived. Just a second ago, he was still visible through the water mirror, walking leisurely within a kilometer. And now bam, he was already in front of them. So this was the legendary technician Kakashi? Guy gave a thumbs up, grinning. Yo! My eternal rival! You finally showed up. Kakashi-senpai. Natsuki greeted him politely. I didn't expect to be praised right after our first meeting. It's truly an honor. I heard you're known as the copy ninja. Do you like my telescope technique enough to copy it with your Sharingan? Kakashi's dead fish eye stared at Natsuki. You sure know a lot. But I'll admit, your telescope technique is pretty handy. In teams without a Byakugan user, it's perfect for reconnaissance. That said, you might be underestimating me. I already learned it. Without the Sharingan. Natsuki calmly dispelled the jutsu. Of course he wasn't underestimating Kakashi. If anything, he knew far more about Kakashi than Kakashi did about him. Still, his goal today wasn't reconnaissance, it was the Hitaki Kenjutsu. So he quickly pulled out the deluxe Makeout Paradise set and handed it over. I heard Kakashi-senpai likes this series, so despite the risk of having my ear twisted off by my girlfriend, I bought the deluxe edition as a gift. You probably already have a set, but, please accept this token of appreciation. Oh? You even looked into my interests. Kakashi stepped forward and gave the books a glance. He didn't refuse and accepted the whole set. After all, it was a sincere gift from a junior, it would have been rude to reject it. So, you already have a girlfriend, hey? And a cute one at that, Guy's student. You've got good taste. My taste is impeccable. If Kakashi-senpai wants to start dating, I can help match you up. I know plenty of pretty kunoichi in the village. For example, Kurane-senpai, who lives next door to Guy-sensei, is an absolute beauty. Cough cough cough. Stop right there. You brat, are you trying to get me killed by Asuma? Kakashi wanted no part in that conversation. Keep going, and this kid might actually try matchmaking and Asuma would come storming in with blood in his eyes. Tenton looked between her boyfriend and Kakashi, sensing some kind of verbal showdown, but she didn't quite understand what they were saying. Riddles. So annoying. Kakashi got to the point. Guy told me you want to learn the Hitaki sword style. Natsuki nodded seriously. Yes. I apologize for looking into Sakumo-senpai's history without permission. Kakashi waved it off. It's fine. In fact, I'm a little touched that kids today still remember my father and even want to learn his sword style. I think he'd be happy to know that. Then, would Kakashi-senpai be willing to teach me? Passing down the sword style isn't a problem, but I'll need to see if you've got the right temperament first. Chapter 63. Here we go again, Kiri. In the world of Naruto, everything always comes back to Kiri, a person's strength, aptitude, and, most importantly, their will. Especially that last part. A ninja's path, their nind, is held in the highest regard. And for someone like Kakashi, who's been through so much, it's no surprise he would value that deeply. Natsuki didn't back down. Kakashi-senpai, however you wish to test me, bring it on. Good eyes. Kakashi nodded slightly. Then let me first see your talent with the blade. Satisfied for now, Kakashi silently pulled out two short swords, tossing one to Natsuki and holding onto the other himself. Natsuki caught the blade, spun it once in his hand, then formed the sign of confrontation. He took a deep breath, eyes locked onto Kakashi, and began slowly closing the distance, seeking the perfect timing to strike. Kakashi also formed the seal of confrontation but remained motionless, calmly waiting with his blade at the ready. Guy and Tenton stood off to the side, quietly watching. The field was silent, yet the tension steadily rose. Natsuki didn't rush. Step by step, he inched forward, eyes always fixed on Kakashi. Meanwhile, Kakashi stood there with ease, like he had nothing to worry about. Now! Natsuki suddenly shouted and vanished. Kakashi was surprised by his speed, but still calmly raised his blade to block the strike aimed at his side. Natsuki twisted his wrist, knocking Kakashi's sword aside and lunged straight for his chest. But Kakashi's blade swung horizontally, once again stopping the tip. Natsuki quickly withdrew and stabbed toward his shoulder, only to be parried yet again. Back and forth they exchanged strikes within just 3 seconds, they had traded several moves. Natsuki's attacks were fast and fierce, but Kakashi's defense was smooth and effortless. It was clear to any observer that Kakashi's swordsmanship far surpassed Natsuki's. Of course, Kakashi was testing Natsuki, so he held back. If he went full power, the fight would have ended long ago. Natsuki understood this, but he didn't dwell on it. Instead, he poured everything he had into each strike. Every slash, thrust, and block polished over the years was a testament to his hard work. There were no flashy moves, just complete focus and sincerity. Kakashi observed closely and couldn't help but nod in approval. A lot could be learned just by watching someone's swordplay. Natsuki's techniques weren't sophisticated, in fact, they were a little stiff, but Kakashi could clearly see his sincerity and dedication. Without any formal guidance, he had pieced together what he could from scattered knowledge, creating a style of his own. Perhaps he lacked genius, or maybe just proper instruction, but his devotion to the blade was unmistakable. Someone like this might just be a good fit to inherit the Hokage sword style. But that alone wasn't enough. Talent-wise, he was still lacking. After all, the Hokage Kenjutsu wasn't ordinary, it was a technique born from ancient samurai arts and refined through chakra control. As Natsuki was launching yet another strike, something changed. Lightning surged around his blade. Chidori-like chakra crackled down the steel, instantly boosting his speed and power, slicing through Kakashi's guard, aimed straight at his throat. Oh? You're not just swinging blindly anymore. Kakashi's eye flashed with surprise, but only for a moment. He let the lightning blade strike. Poof! A burst of smoke. It hit a log. Kawarimi no Jutsu, substitution technique. Before Natsuki could react, he felt cold steel brush his neck. Kakashi's short sword was already resting there. You lost, Kakashi said calmly, withdrawing the blade. I lost, Natsuki nodded without complaint. You don't seem disappointed. You do realize failing this might mean you won't learn the Hokage Kenjutsu. My swordsmanship is inferior to yours, Kakashi-senpai. It's only natural I lost. Besides, if I beat you, would I even need to learn the Hokage style anymore? As for whether you teach me or not, that's entirely up to you. Even if I can't learn this, I'll find other ways to grow stronger. I've heard what you told Guy, Kakashi said, voice low. You said you want to become stronger to protect your girlfriend and your friends. That's absolutely true. Natsuki wasn't worried about this part of the test. He really did care deeply for Tenton, Shino, and the others. It was all genuine, no bluffing. Kakashi observed him carefully, no hesitation in the boy's eyes. That alone earned him a few more points. Then, unexpectedly, Kakashi asked, Guy also told me you want to master both the 8 gates and the Hokage sword style. So, do you want to become Hokage? Natsuki froze. He didn't understand how Kakashi had arrived at that conclusion. He shook his head firmly. No. I don't want to be Hokage. Kakashi blinked in surprise. You want to be the strongest, but not the Hokage. Exactly. Being Hokage sounds exhausting. Just look at the third, he's always working overtime, buried in paperwork, can't even spend time with his grandson. If I became Hokage, I'd have no time for Tenton, and if I had kids in the future, I couldn't be a good father. No thanks. And besides, being the strongest doesn't mean you have to be Hokage. I believe that no matter your role or title, anyone can protect what's important to them and defend the village. That's what truly matters, right? Hat. Well said. Very well said. Kakashi actually smiled, a rare, genuine one. So then, what's your dream? Natsuki scratched his head, thinking. Honestly, I've never thought too deeply about that. Back then, I just wanted to survive, live well, even for my parents who passed away. Later, after meeting Shino, Shikamaru, and Chi, and after winning Tenton's heart, I just wanted to protect them. So, I want to get stronger. That's all. It was a simple dream. But the simpler the words, the more sincere they felt. Kakashi nodded approvingly. Not bad. You've passed. Passed. Does that mean Kakashi-senpai is willing to teach me the Hotaki sword style? That's right, Kakashi said with a rare warmth. Your answer was honest. I'm satisfied. If you're the one inheriting the Hotaki style, then I approve. Once you've mastered it, make sure to protect your loved ones and your comrades. Yes. Thank you so much, Kakashi-senpai. Natsuki bowed deeply, voice strong and resolute. Just then, Guy suddenly burst into tears. Oh! Such a youthful moment. I'm so moved. Tenton was instantly thrown off. Guy-sensei. Don't ruin such a beautiful scene. Natsuki and Kakashi couldn't help but laugh. With Might Guy around, there was never a lack of laughter, especially now that they had a girl who could deliver solid punchlines. Things were about to get much more fun. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, Hiruzen gently covered the crystal ball on his desk, a smile of satisfaction on his weathered face. This boy Natsuki is worth cultivating. Chapter 64. On this side, Kakashi handed Natsuki a scroll. This contains the sword techniques my father left behind. Study it on your own. I didn't learn it well when I was younger. Compared to my father, I fall far short. I probably wouldn't be able to guide you properly. I once tried to master this sword style too, but I could never grasp its essence. So whether you learn it or not, is up to you. Natsuki received the scroll quietly and stared at Kakashi for a long moment. Kakashi was puzzled. Why are you looking at me like that? Natsuki answered honestly, I thought Kakashi-senpai had given up on Sakumo-senpai's sword style. Ha, so that's what you thought. Kakashi smiled. You might be right. There was a time I resented my father for his suicide. I even abandoned his sword style. Later, I understood his will, but perhaps I no longer had the right to inherit his blade. Maybe, that's why I could never truly master it. Natsuki shook his head. He didn't really understand. Even after watching the anime, he still didn't fully understand Kakashi. Those who have experienced too much often carry deep complexities, especially in a twisted world like this, where holding on to one's beliefs is already a precious thing. Maybe Kakashi did understand his father, maybe he didn't. Perhaps only when he dies like in the original story and meets Sakumo again in the afterlife, having a heart-to-heart as father and son, could he truly understand. But Natsuki wasn't going to worry about all that. He got what he came for. 8 gates and Hotaki sword style more than enough for him to face down any threat in the early stages. Once Hiruzen dies and Tsunade takes over as Hokage, he'll aim for Flying Thunder God next. At Ichiraku Ramen, Natsuki, Tenton, Kakashi, and Guy sat down together. Originally, Natsuki had planned to treat them to something fancy as a small token of appreciation, but Kakashi insisted on Ichiraku. Natsuki couldn't argue and agreed. Maybe for Kakashi and Guy, they never expected anything in return from Natsuki. Passing down what they knew was simply part of nurturing the next generation for the village. And so, Natsuki didn't mind protecting the village. Of course, the village he wanted to protect was the one with Tenton, his father-in-law, Shino, Shikamaru, Chiji, and the others. Not the one run by the so-called F4 of the old generation. He had no intention of sacrificing for them. Those old fossils from the previous era would be better off dead to stop hindering the new generation. By the way, Natsuki, you've got a few interesting moves, don't you? Like the Rokushiki, Kakashi casually brought up. Oh, Kakashi-senpai must have heard from Gai-sensei. Yeah, the Rokushiki is a taijutsu style I developed myself. It's a bit rough, but it helps when I'm not using the 8 gates. If Kakashi-senpai is interested, I can demonstrate so you can copy it with your Sharingan. Natsuki didn't mind spreading the Rokushiki. It wasn't anything too valuable. After all, Kakashi had just given him the family sword style. This little taijutsu was nothing in comparison. Kakashi split his disposable chopsticks. No need to copy it. I'm just curious. After all, there aren't many techniques Guy praises. Natsuki picked up a piece of meat and placed it in Tenton's bowl. Really not going to copy it? One of the moves, jab, lets you run through the air. Kakashi froze mid-bite. Now that you mention it, that does sound worth copying. Not many ninja techniques allow for aerial movement. If you come across a flying enemy, it's no good being stuck on the ground. That technique's called jab, huh? Explain it to me. Oh, you gather water vapor under your feet, using chakra control to step on it and launch yourself. That way you can run or dash through the air. As Natsuki spoke, he put down his chopsticks, stood up, and demonstrated by walking a few steps mid-air with jab, then landed again. This technique doesn't use much chakra. As long as you control your chakra flow well, you could run for 10 kilometers in the sky no problem. Kakashi quietly lowered his forehead protector, covering his Sharingan. He had already copied the technique just now. He understood what Natsuki was doing. The Hokage sword style was too precious, and Natsuki felt uneasy receiving it without giving something in return. Treating them to ramen wasn't enough, so when the topic of Rokushiki came up, he naturally offered it as a gesture of goodwill. And truth be told, Jep was actually quite useful solving the common problem of aerial combat among ninjas. Tenten stared at Kakashi in shock. Kakashi-senpai, you're I. Kakashi smiled faintly. Just some old stories. Not something kids need to understand. But yes, the title Copy Ninja does come from this I. Nothing worth admiring. Tenten remembered when Natsuki and Kakashi talked earlier he mentioned the Sharingan and Copy Ninja. So this was what he meant. She was curious, but not the type to pry into others' secrets. And if she really wanted to know, she'd just ask Natsuki later. He always seemed to know everything. After finishing their meal, they said their goodbyes outside the shop. Natsuki and Tenten walked home hand in hand, exchanging a smile. Tenten leaned on his shoulder. Natsuki, looks like you finally achieved all your goals. Are you happy? Natsuki pinched her cute nose. Yup. And it's all thanks to my most beloved girlfriend. So, how should I thank you? Maybe we should just get married. Humph. In your dreams. You're only 11, little brother. Tenten's teasing giggle was charming enough to leave Natsuki dazed. They gazed into each other's eyes and slowly leaned in. Tonight's kiss tasted like ramen. That night, in the gravity training room, Natsuki had returned the gravity to normal. Since he was going to practice sword techniques, it was best not to let gravity interfere, otherwise, he'd just be wasting effort. He opened the scroll and studied it for a long while. His summary could be boiled down to one word: speed. The essence of the Hokage sword style was speed unmatched, overwhelming speed. It was quite similar in principle to the Flying Thunder God or the Rakige's lightning release. The scroll contained many techniques. They looked simple and ancient, clearly passed down from the Warring States era. The key was the coordination of sword techniques with lightning release chakra, and high-speed movement techniques. Simply put, Hokage Sakumo was powerful because his shunshin, body flicker technique, was already fast, but his sword was twice as fast as him. By the time the enemy saw him, their head was already separated from their body. No wonder Kakashi couldn't master it. This is insanely difficult. Kakashi learned a bit as a child, but after Sakumo's death, his swordsmanship faded. Later, with the chakra drain from the Sharingan, it became impossible to keep up. And I'm not more talented than Kakashi, can I really learn this? It felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over Natsuki's excitement. But he wasn't the type to give up easily. He was still young, very young, and he had time. As long as he kept grinding, he was sure he could master at least part of it. And even if he only grasped the basics, pairing it with the speed and strength of the 8 gates could still be enough to cut down some cage-level foes. And so, gritting his teeth, he dove into practice. Chapter 65. Event. Starting as a Class 5 mutant finish line. Time was like the leaves on a tree falling one by one, slowly withering. In the blink of an eye, it was already time for Natsuki's class to graduate. Naruto, the usual troublemaker, had surprisingly stopped causing as much chaos. Turns out, his addiction to playing cards had grown stronger. He'd rather spend his time playing than messing around. Besides, in Naruto's mind, graduating was already a sure thing. Ever since he mastered tree climbing and water walking, his chakra control had improved by leaps and bounds. Using the 3 basic jutsu was no longer a problem. Or so he thought. But reality was far more cruel. On the day of the graduation exam, Iruka-sensei announced the test topic, Clone Jutsu. Naruto was instantly confident. He had long since mastered clone techniques and had even, somehow, picked up Natsuki's clone combination technique, using it to defeat several classmates during outdoor training. Even Natsuki thought Naruto would pass easily. Next, Natsuki. Uzumaki Naruto, get ready. Natsuki stood and entered the adjacent room. Iruka and Mizuki were waiting there to grade. Natsuki honestly formed hand seals and created 2 solid clones. He immediately received full marks from both teachers and stepped outside. Naruto stood at the door, flashing him a big grin. That smile practically said, graduation? Easy win. Naruto walked up confidently, stood before Iruka and Mizuki, formed his seals perfectly, and poof, produced a limp, lifeless clone lying on the floor. It looked wrong. Hey? What? That's not right. What happened, Date Bayo? Naruto's face fell in disbelief. What's going on, Naruto? Iruka frowned. Naruto had always used clone techniques just fine during outdoor classes. What was happening now? Could he be goofing off on purpose? Impossible. Naruto had always dreamed of becoming a ninja. He'd never mess around during the graduation exam. Could it be the Nine-Tailed Seal? Iruka's expression turned serious. Naruto, try using the other techniques, transformation and substitution. I want to see if something else is off. Panicked, Naruto quickly followed his instructions. But even his favorite sexy no jutsu malfunctioned. Instead of transforming into a blonde bombshell Naruto, he turned into a middle-aged woman with a bucket waist. Substitution didn't work properly either. It was all just off. Iruka made a quick decision. Naruto, your graduation exam is suspended. I'm going to speak with the Hokage. With that, he rushed out of the classroom. Naruto was frozen. Iruka-sensei. What's going on, Date Bayo? I could use the 3 techniques just fine before. Why is this happening now? Mizuki's eyes flashed a calculating glint passed through them. Outside the classroom, Natsuki hadn't left yet. He saw Iruka rushing off and heard Naruto's distressed voice. A deep frown formed on Natsuki's face. So Naruto suddenly can't even perform the techniques he was fine with before? Is this the plot asserting itself, or the Nine-Tailed Seal loosening? No, if the plot was destined to move, then what about me chasing Tenton, mastering the 8 gates and Hokage swordsmanship? That wouldn't make sense. It must be the Nine-Tails chakra interfering, messing up Naruto's chakra control. That would explain why his techniques are failing. But if that's the case, doesn't that mean things are aligning back with the original story? Or could it be Hiruzen is behind this, trying to intentionally prevent Naruto from graduating? Natsuki couldn't be sure. His friends nearby were just as confused. There were even some unpleasant whispers like Demon Fox and serves him right. Natsuki ignored them. Just then, Naruto stepped out, looking utterly defeated. I. His voice trembled and then he actually started crying. Kaiba twisted the knife. Wow, Naruto. You seriously flopped? Did you get so nervous you forgot how to form hand signs? I didn't. Naruto snapped back. I remember every seal perfectly. I did everything right, but it still didn't work. To prove it, he formed the signs again. His technique was spot on. But with a poof, his clone once again slumped to the ground like a dying fish. Everyone went silent. Based on Naruto's usual performance in class, he had decent chakra control and could use all 3 basic techniques. If the seals were correct and the form was clean, yet the results were wrong, then something was clearly off inside. Shikamaru and Shino exchanged a glance, both seemed to realize something. The Nine Tails. Hinata, seeing her crush so upset, mustered up her courage and said, "Na Naruto-kun, don't worry. Iruka-sensei went to find the Hokage. He'll definitely help you fix this." "Yeah, thanks, Hinata." At this point, Naruto could only place his hopes on the third Hokage. If even the Hokage couldn't solve this, then he really might never become a ninja. And he refused to accept a future like that. Not long after, Iruka returned. His face was heavy with worry. Naruto rushed over. "Iruka-sensei. What did the third grandpa say? Can my problem be fixed?" Iruka gave Naruto a complicated look and sighed. "Naruto, your case is a bit special. The Hokage said he'll find a way to fix it. But, for now, we can't count this as a pass. You'll have to try again next year." What? No way." Naruto's expression collapsed but quickly turned to determination. "Then I'll go ask the third grandpa myself, Date Bayo." And with that, he bolted straight toward the Hokage's office. Iruka didn't stop him, he just watched the boy's figure disappear into the distance, eyes full of mixed emotions. Natsuki stood by, thoughtful. The whole situation felt off. If the Nine-Tailed Seal really had loosened, disrupting Naruto's chakra control, maybe Hiruzen was taking advantage of it, using the opportunity to manipulate Naruto, pushing him toward dependence on Iruka, deepening their bond. That way, the village could more easily control the Jinchuriki, making him willing to fight for Konoha. Then again, maybe Hiruzen had someone sabotage Naruto behind the scenes. No, if he kept thinking like that, he'd end up diving into full-on conspiracy theories. Still, conspiracy or not, it wasn't entirely implausible. Shino asked quietly, "Natsuki, what should we do?" Natsuki shook his head. "Naruto's status is too special. Whatever happens next, the Hokage will handle it. We can't interfere. But, if there's anything we can do to help Naruto, we should do it." Shino nodded. That was all they could do for now. Everything else depended on the Hokage's decision. Pushing those thoughts aside, Natsuki held onto his forehead protector and walked out of the school building. At the gates, a certain adorable girl with twin buns was already waiting for him. Chapter 66. Barbecue Q. Today's treat was on Tenton. "Congratulations on graduating and becoming real ninjas." Tenton grinned as she picked up a piece of grilled meat and placed it in the plates of Natsuki and Shino. "Then I won't hold back," Shino responded calmly. He had known this couple for so long that politeness had long been discarded. He quietly devoured the food on his plate, though he seemed distracted, clearly preoccupied. Tenton noticed and gave her boyfriend a questioning glance. Natsuki tried to reassure him, "Shino, don't worry. Whatever's going on with Naruto, it's not something we can interfere with. The third Hokage likely has his own plans." Tenton tilted her head curiously. "What happened to Naruto? Did he fail the exam?" Shino nodded. "Yeah. For some reason, Naruto suddenly lost control over his chakra. Today's test was the transformation technique he used to be able to do it smoothly, but today it was a total mess. No one knows what went wrong. Iruka-sensei went to talk to the Hokage, and he said he'd handle it quickly, but it looks like Naruto will have to wait until next year to take the exam again." Just talking about it brought Shino's mood down again. Though he wasn't as close to Naruto as he was with Natsuki, Shino was the kind of guy who took his friendships seriously. Poor Naruto. He's always shouting about becoming Hokage. Now he can't even become a genin. Tenton looked surprised. She hadn't expected something like this to happen. Natsuki didn't know what to say either. He couldn't exactly tell them that he suspected this was some scheme cooked up by the old geezer, Hiruzen, or something even deeper. Plus, the plot had already shifted so much, who knew if things would continue following the original story? But seeing his friend so down wasn't good. He had to change the subject somehow. So, he gave his future wife a subtle look. Tenton immediately got the message and shifted topics. "Speaking of which, do you know which team you'll be assigned to yet?" Natsuki shrugged. "I'd like to be in the same team as Shino, honestly. He's strong and reliable." Shino, pulled out of his thoughts, nodded. Being on the same team with Natsuki would definitely be ideal. Shikamaru and Chi wouldn't be bad either. They're lazy and love to eat, but when it counts, they come through. No way those two are getting split up, Tenton said, clearly familiar with the situation. The Ino-Shikase trio is inseparable. Shikamaru, Chiji, and Ino are definitely going to be assigned together. Natsuki mentally nodded. Not only was the Ino-Shikase trio unbreakable, but they were also arranged close to the Hokage's line. That team would be led by Hiruzen's son, Sarutobi Asuma. Likewise, the team of Shino, Inyazuka Kaiba, and Higa Hinata would be led by Asuma's girlfriend, Yi Kurane. This way, the major clans Nara, Akimichi, Yamanaka, Abarame, Inyazuka, Higa were all being drawn into the Hokage's circle. It was a pretty masterful setup. As for the other teams, Kakashi was a direct subordinate of the Hokage, and Guy was someone fiercely loyal to the village. Almost every promising young ninja was already being pulled into the Hokage's sphere of influence. No wonder Danzo couldn't outmaneuver his old comrade. If it weren't for Orochimaru's Konoha crush later on, Hiruzen probably would have held on to power until the day he died. But what about me? Natsuki muttered. That was his current worry. He'd chosen to reveal part of his strength a year before graduation. He had trained in Guy's Hachiman Tonk, 8 Gates Release, and even learned Hatake swordsmanship from Kakashi. There was no way Hiruzen hadn't noticed, not when Natsuki hadn't gone out of his way to hide any of it. So how would Hiruzen handle this genius? Was it possible that Naruto had failed on purpose just so Natsuki could be placed on Team 7? Didn't seem likely. But Konoha didn't exactly have a surplus of elite genin right now. So who would Hiruzen appoint to teach him? Natsuki shook off the messy thoughts. No point overthinking. He'd find out the answer tomorrow anyway when he went to school. After finishing the meal, Natsuki and Tenton walked Shino home, then headed back to the ninja tool shop. When the shop owner saw his future son-in-law, he only gave a small nod without offering congratulations. It wasn't until he noticed his daughter glaring at him that he reluctantly muttered, "Congrats on becoming a real ninja." Natsuki grinned wide. "Thanks, father-in-law." He'd long since gotten used to calling him that, and the shop owner had long since stopped arguing. Tenton had gone from blushing over it to acting like it was completely natural. Everyone pretty much assumed the two were already family. Once they came of age, it'd be time to discuss marriage. Tenton pulled him over to a pile of ninja tools. "I've noticed you don't use tools much in battle, but you're a ninja now, you should always carry more. Let's go with 50 kunao and shuriken each. I've packed them all into a summoning scroll. Oh. Since you learned Hatake swordsmanship, you'll need a short sword. That demon blade, 1000 edge, is too long. You should take 3 short swords. What if you break one?" Natsuki let her do her thing, his eyes glued to her the whole time. Tenton seemed extra talkative today but clearly enjoying herself. She looked like she wanted to pack the entire shop into his scroll. The shop owner was all smiles at first, but his face gradually darkened. His sweet little daughter had become a money-burning machine. Those chakra-forged short swords were ridiculously expensive, and she gave Natsuki 3 without even blinking. Why not just take his whole shop? Natsuki noticed and tugged at Tenton. Ahem. Tenton, maybe that's enough. Otherwise, our old man's gonna start crying. Tenton looked back at her dad and casually said, "Dad, this is about your daughter's happiness. Don't be stingy. If Natsuki runs into danger out there, how are you gonna get a grandkid later?" "Fine, fine. Just pack up the whole damn shop," the shop owner shouted, stomping his feet. Of course, he didn't mean it. The shop would be Tenton's eventually anyway. She could do whatever she wanted with it. He was just having a heart attack watching his life's work get handed over to some guy. Natsuki couldn't help but laugh at the heartwarming scene. "Stop laughing and help. You'll be doing missions soon, camping outdoors and all that. You need to be ready, or you'll be running around like a headless chicken." "Yes, ma'am. Whatever the wife says goes." "Who's your ahem?" "Fine. Then listen to your dear wife's orders." Hands on her hips, Tenton wore a bright smile as she bossed Natsuki around. She had long since gotten used to him calling her his wife. Not only did it not make her blush anymore, she even shot back with jokes. After all, they'd been dating for years. Might as well act like an old married couple already. The only regret? They were still too young, so some things had to wait. Chapter 67. Early the next morning, Natsuki looked at the pile of scrolls in his hands and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Tenton had nearly packed the entire ninja tool shop into those scrolls. It was like a mom stuffing her son's backpack to the brim before a trip. Even when Tenton had become a full-fledged ninja, she hadn't brought this much stuff. And today was just for team assignments. They weren't even leaving the village for at least a month. There was absolutely no need to bring this much gear. Tenton, this is... Alright, I know it's a bit much. Tenton looked a bit embarrassed. She'd gotten a little too excited yesterday. She picked out a portion of the scrolls and set them aside. These are already sorted. You can take them when you need them, no need to go searching again. Actually, you don't have to bring anything today, just wait until you start training or leave the village. Natsuki finally let out a sigh of relief. Yeah, I got it. Tenton gave her boyfriend a once-over, admiring how cool he looked with his new forehead protector. Then, on her tiptoes, she planted a kiss on his lips, tasting faintly of meat buns. It had become such a habit over the years that even the neighbors had gotten used to it. Nothing to be shy about. Though when she felt the little rascal trying to get handsy, she shot him a glare but didn't stop him either. I'm off to do my mission now, Tenton said as she turned and left. Natsuki glanced over the pile of scrolls again, picked out one containing some special shuriken, and handed the rest over to his soon-to-be father-in-law for safekeeping. He still didn't know who his team leader would be. There might be some kind of test. Bringing along a special shuriken as a first meeting gift shouldn't be too much, right? When Natsuki arrived in the classroom, he saw Naruto proudly showing off his forehead protector. He remembered hearing some ruckus last night. Looks like something really had gone down. Still, he asked, Naruto, how'd you get your forehead protector? Naruto chuckled smugly, of course, Iruka-sensei gave it to me. Last night was wild. Turns out Mizuki-sensei betrayed Konoha and tried to trick me into, doing bad stuff. But luckily Iruka-sensei showed up. I even showed him a little of my strength, and he acknowledged me. Then he gave me this. Just like in the original storyline. Was it fate? Or part of Hiruzen's plan? Didn't matter. Natsuki only cared about his own team and teacher. As for the protagonist's drama, he was just here to enjoy the show. Just then, Sasuke walked into the room with his hands in his pockets, instantly drawing screams from the girls. Even though Sasuke had lost to Natsuki before graduation, he was still handsome and cool, and to girls, that's all that really mattered. Sasuke had barely sat down before his number one fang girl, Sakura, rushed to his side. Other girls quickly gathered around him, all hoping to be on the same team as him. Sasuke kept his usual cold expression, ignoring everyone. To the guys, though, this just looked like he was playing hard to get. Naruto couldn't stand seeing Sasuke so popular and immediately jumped onto the desk, locking eyes with him. Their faces got closer and closer. Natsuki froze, then quickly summoned a Polaroid camera from a scroll and started focusing it. Just as he got the shot lined up, someone bumped Naruto's butt, and the iconic Naruto and Sasuke first kiss scene played out. Click. Click. Snap. That was Natsuki's rapid-fire camera going off. Crack. Crack. That was the sound of girls' hearts breaking. Crunch crunch. That was Koji munching on chips, sounding especially loud in the now silent classroom. Wah-ya. That's disgusting. Naruto clutched his throat, gagging. You idiot, Naruto. What the hell was that? Sasuke also retched. Then the girls, led by Sakura, started to gang up on Naruto. After all, their dream guy just had his first kiss stolen. Who could bear that? Ino, sitting with Shikamaru and Koji, was thoroughly enjoying the show. After realizing she was just face-blind and not truly obsessed with Sasuke, she'd patched things up with Sakura long ago. Now, seeing all these girls fawning over Sasuke reminded her of her own past, and she couldn't help but laugh at herself. But when she saw Sasuke's first kiss stolen by Naruto, she nearly died from laughter. Shikamaru glanced at Natsuki with a deadpan face. You're a demon, and seriously, you even had a camera ready. Natsuki casually pulled out the photos and fanned them in the air. The first kiss of Naruto and Sasuke, fresh prints, and not just one. There was still film left too. These were going to be treasured memories of Team 7. Nothing would be better for teasing Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura in the future. Hey, Natsuki, give me one, Shino suddenly said. Ino shot her hand up, me too. I want one for the memories. Even Koji reached out, and though Shikamaru sighed at the trouble, he also held out his hand. Naruto was their best buddy, saving blackmail for future laughs was a must. Naruto, still being chased by furious girls, suddenly noticed the shady photo exchange going on and screamed, "Wah! Natsuki, what are you guys doing? Why are there pictures? Destroy them! Burn them now!" Sasuke's face darkened too, wishing he could tear those guys to pieces. His first kiss, stolen by a guy, and now photographed, and in their hands. No, his Manjiki Sharingan was about to awaken from trauma. Natsuki smiled as he glanced at the photos. "Don't be so dramatic, Naruto. This is your and Sasuke's first kiss. It's a precious memory. Someday when you're married and have kids, we can show them these and tell them the story of your deep friendship. Isn't that romantic?" The others burst into laughter. Romantic? More like cultural trauma. Naruto was about to explode. "Natsuki, how could you? Don't you know how important a first kiss is? This isn't something to joke about." Natsuki looked completely serious. "Of course I know. I remember mine very clearly. It tasted like grilled meat. This morning's kiss? Meat buns. Whoa whoa whoa. Killing us single folks here." Everyone else was still single, yet he and Tenton had been dating for years. Why the heck was he rubbing it in? Luckily, Iruka-sensei arrived just in time to stop the chaos. He seemed to have a few injuries, but nothing serious. And as the one in charge of announcing the team assignments, there was no way he'd miss it. "You're all graduates now. You're officially ninja. I'm proud of each of you. Now listen up for your team assignments. Team 1. Team 7, Uzumaki Naruto, Harano Sakura, Sasuke. Jonin Leader, Hitaki Kakashi. Team 8, Abarame Shino, Hyuga Hinata, Inuzuka Kaiba. Jonin Leader, Yi Kurane. Team 9, Yamashiro Ron, Kato Megami, Natsuki. Jonin Leader, Yamashiro Aoba. Team 10, Nara Shikamaru, Yamanaka Ino, Akimichi Koji. Jonin Leader, Sarutobi Asuma. Chapter 68. Alright, that's it for the team assignments. You're dismissed for now. Come back to your classroom this afternoon. Your squad leaders will be here to pick you up. Lastly, congratulations to all of you." Iruka's voice carried a hint of emotion. He had poured his heart into teaching this class, and now that every one of his students had successfully graduated, he felt proud, but also worried. The path of a shinobi was full of dangers. He could only hope they'd all be safe and sound in the future. After Iruka left, Naruto was torn between joy and frustration. On one hand, he got assigned to the same team as Sakura. Awesome. But on the other hand, that smug Sasuke was on the team too. Sakura, meanwhile, was overjoyed and completely ignored Naruto. Just being on Sasuke's team made her happy. "What a pity we didn't end up on the same team," Shino said with slight regret. "Hehe, it is a bit of a shame. But no worries, we're still friends, still comrades in the same village." Natsuki smiled and reassured him. In truth, he wasn't surprised by the team divisions. They were the same as the original story. What did surprise him was that Hiruzen Sarutobi had assigned Yamashiro Aoba, a special jonin, to be his squad leader. Yamashiro Aoba, special jonin of Konoha, part of the intelligence division. He excelled in sensory, reconnaissance, interrogation, support, and was skilled in mind reading, summoning, binding, fire release, and more. He could even use the scattered thousand crows technique, and his taijutsu wasn't weak either. A true all-rounder support ninja. In the original timeline, Aoba didn't get much screen time. His most memorable moment was during the rescue of Asuma. Back then, when Asuma was fatally cursed by Hiden and Shikamaru and his team were in deep trouble, Aoba had rushed over with Reito, Koji, and Ino. He disrupted Hiden with a swarm of crows and even held his own in taijutsu against Kakuzu, going toe-to-toe. His fire release was pretty impressive, too. But most impressive of all was his mind-reading technique. He once even dove into Kisame's brain to extract memories. Natsuki didn't expect that Hiruzen would assign someone like Aoba as his team leader. Truly surprising. But what he didn't know was that Hiruzen hadn't had many good choices left. Konoha had plenty of jonin, but most weren't suitable for leading a genin team. For example, Hayashi Hyuga, Shikaku Nara, Choza Akimichi, Inoichi Yamanaka, and Shibuya Barame. These were all clan heads with important duties and no time to spare. Kakashi, Guy, Asuma, and Kurane were already assigned. Most of the remaining jonin were in the ANBU, and couldn't be pulled out easily. That left only the pool of special jonin to choose from. After much deliberation, Aoba seemed the most suitable. Aoba might not be the strongest, but he was certainly versatile. Hiruzen believed he'd make a good teacher. And besides, Natsuki was self-motivated and strong in independent study. He was already learning the Hachiman, 8 Gates, and Hotaki sword techniques on his own. He didn't need someone powerful, he needed someone experienced to guide him. So Aoba became the first choice. I'm going to meet up with my teammates. Natsuki said goodbye to Shino and exchanged a look with Yamashiro Ron and Kato Megami. He gestured outside, and the two nodded, getting up to leave together. At a deserted training ground, the new members of Team 9 stood face to face. When Natsuki recalled their names, he almost laughed. The combo of Megami and Ron sounded like characters straight out of Psychono. Kato Megami, could she be related to Kato Dan or Kato Shizuan? She looked elegant, calm, and didn't have the usual delicate aura of most girls. Not bad. As for Yamashiro Ron, maybe he was from the same clan as Aoba. Still, speculation meant nothing right now. There was something more important to take care of. Natsuki crossed his arms and spoke seriously, now that Team 9 is formed, we need to choose a leader. When the sensei isn't around, we'll follow the leader's command. I think I'm the right person for the job. Any objections? Since they'd be working closely together, Natsuki didn't want to sit back passively. He wasn't sure if these two were reliable or not, so it was better to take the initiative and claim leadership early. Ron and Megami exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. They did need someone to take the lead when the teacher wasn't around, and that person had to be strong. Given Natsuki's usual performance, they were convinced. And seeing his aura now, it was clear he wasn't asking. If they refused, they might just get beaten up. Better to submit early. Natsuki grinned. Great. From now on, we're a team. And as your team leader, I'll treat you guys to Ichiraku ramen. We'll eat and talk strategy. Both Ron and Megami warmed up to Natsuki quickly. His smile was friendly, and his offer to treat them to food showed he wasn't stingy. That was a good sign, less chance of being bullied later. At Ichiraku ramen, Natsuki ordered the deluxe set for all three of them and began asking questions. Ron, you've got the same last name as Aoba. Are you two related? Ron nodded. He's my cousin. He's a kind and easygoing guy, and really strong. He's great at taijutsu, genjutsu, ninjutsu, summoning, even mind reading. He's a jack of all trades. I've always admired him. Megami's eyes lit up. Are squad leaders that amazing? Ron's nose practically pointed to the ceiling. Of course. Boss, Megami, trust me, learning from my cousin is the best decision. He's got mad skills. Megami nodded earnestly, clearly convinced. Natsuki had no reason to doubt it either. In fact, he knew more than they did. Aoba really was impressive. Just think, he managed to go hand-to-hand with someone like Kakuzu and even disrupted Haiden. And being able to dig through someone's brain to retrieve memories? That was wild. Then Natsuki turned to Megami. Megami, I heard Tsunade-sama once had a lover named Kato Dan, and an assistant named Kato Shizuan. Any relation to you? Maybe. Possibly distant relatives. Megami looked unsure. I can ask my parents when I get home. If we really are related, that'd be amazing. I never thought I'd be related to someone like Tsunade-sama. Totally normal, most girls admired Tsunade. There was probably some connection between Megami and the Kato family. Konoha might have many small clans, but people sharing the same surname usually weren't strangers. He'd look into it later. After finishing their ramen, Natsuki led them back to the training ground. We may be graduates now, but I have a feeling our squad leader will still test us. Probably to gauge our abilities. Let's prepare something special to impress Aoba-sensei. Chapter 69. Hokage Office. A group of Jonin and Special Jonin had gathered. Once they received the files for their respective teams, they began departing one by one, heading for the Ninja Academy. Kakashi looked at the student roster for Team 7 with a helpless expression. He'd been hoping for a laid-back life, but the Hokage had thrown him into yet another troublesome situation. Uzumaki Naruto Minato-sensei's son, and the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Sasuke, last surviving member of the Uchiha clan. This wasn't going to be an easy group to handle. Meanwhile, Yamashiro Aoba received the file for Team 9 and let out a rare sigh of relief when he saw that his younger cousin, Yamashiro Ron, was one of the students. Honestly, Aoba didn't really understand why someone like him, an Intelligence Division Special Jonin, was being assigned to lead a genin squad. But since his cousin was among the members, he figured it might as well be a mini vacation. Hiruzen had also given him a subtle reminder, Aoba, there's a kid in your team named Natsuki. He's a real genius. Make sure you train him well. Natsuki? A genius? Aoba opened Natsuki's file and was momentarily stunned. This Natsuki, he's the inventor of the ninja card game? And he even beat Uchiha Sasuke in a match? One-handed seals. Water release. Hokage-sama, with all due respect, a genius like this should be assigned to Kakashi. Kakashi rolled his eyes. Why did everyone keep trying to dump all the problems on him? Hiruzen chuckled. Kakashi already has his hands full. Only he is suitable for guiding Sasuke, and of course, there's also Naruto. As for Natsuki, just keep a close eye on him. Kakashi patted Aoba on the shoulder. You'll be fine, Aoba. Natsuki's a great kid, smart, calm, responsible. He'll make your job easy. Aoba gave Kakashi a surprised look. He hadn't expected Kakashi to have such high praise for this Natsuki. That made him genuinely curious. Well then, I'll do my best. With that, Aoba tucked the files away and headed for the school. Before reaching the classroom, he quickly reviewed the team information again before putting it all away. Then, he appeared at the doorway of the classroom. Team 9 Natsuki, Yamashiro Ron, Kato Megami. With me. He turned around and left without waiting. Natsuki nodded to Shino, then quickly left the classroom with his two teammates and followed after their retreating squad leader. This Aoba-sensei clearly didn't play by the book. He called them out but then rushed off without explanation. Was this an immediate field test? The three of them made a prompt decision to pursue. Natsuki kept the pace in the middle, setting the rhythm, ensuring they kept up without burning too much stamina. More importantly, none of them said a word. They didn't seem curious or eager to ask what Aoba had planned. Aoba noticed all of this and nodded internally. Never mind their actual combat ability for genin, this kind of composure was already a passing mark. A shinobi should follow orders without unnecessary chatter. When a leader says move, you move. If it's something you need to know, the leader will tell you. If it were Naruto, he'd already be whining and shouting by now. Noisy, reckless hotheads were the worst kind of teammates for Jonin. They disobey orders and mess things up. Only Kakashi had the patience to handle that kind of energy. Anyway, back to Aoba. Natsuki had also been observing their new squad leader. Appearance-wise, he was just like in the original timeline. Spiky black hair, forehead protector worn at an angle, green sunglasses, blue bodysuit with green Jonin armor, very cool looking. As for personality and strength, that would take time to figure out. Not long after, Aoba stopped at a training field. Natsuki and his teammates halted across from him, standing at attention. Aoba adjusted his sunglasses. I'm Yamashiro Aoba, Special Jonin of the Intelligence Division. From now on, I'm your team leader. I've read your files, so let's skip the introductions. Let me see your strength first. Oh ho, straight to the point, hey? That's fine, no need to talk about likes, dislikes, and dreams. Let's just fight. Natsuki made a hand sign. Immediately, Ron and Megami moved to either side of Aoba, subtly forming a three-way encirclement, though none of them rushed in recklessly. Aoba smiled. Starting off with a direct attack? I thought stealth was a ninja's basic skill. Natsuki's expression didn't change. Aoba-sensei is a special Jonin who specializes in detection and tracking. Our stealth techniques wouldn't fool you anyway, so no point pretending. Aoba gave an approving nod. Not a bad assessment. So then, how do you plan to attack? Natsuki flicked out a shuriken to test the waters. Aoba casually deflected it with a kunao, keeping an eye on the two flanking genin. Dodging would have created an opening, so he blocked instead. He didn't expect both Megami and Ron to follow up with shuriken of their own. Aoba frowned and parried again. Something felt off. The moment his kunao made contact, the shuriken suddenly burst, releasing a cloud of toxic smoke that instantly surrounded him. His expression changed as he held his breath. These little punks are pulling tricks on me already. Natsuki took the opportunity to form hand seals, summoning a few shadow clones to burrow underground, then continued sealing to activate 4 Demon Seal technique and Clone Fusion technique. Meanwhile, Megami and Roan kept throwing more shuriken, but instead of aiming at Aoba, they embedded them in the ground. The next second, the shuriken ejected hooked wires, successfully latching onto Aoba's clothing. He hadn't even managed to escape the poison mist yet and was already hooked. Getting free now would be messy. These were custom shuriken Natsuki had given his teammates. The poisoned ones obstructed vision and created chaos. The wire ones didn't cause much damage but made it really annoying to move. Trying to break free would just waste time and effort, or worse, tear your clothes off mid-fight. These kids, their sneak attack game's strong. Aoba almost laughed. He was genuinely impressed. He might only be a special jonin, not some cage-level powerhouse, but it was rare for fresh genin to manage to catch him off guard like this. That alone was a solid achievement. Still, he couldn't be too easy on them. If he looked too weak now, he'd lose all authority as their leader. With a quick set of hand seals, he blew a gust of wind from his mouth, dispersing the toxic mist. But just as he was about to break the wires, Natsuki charged at him head-on. His speed was impressive, and the sound of air splitting around his punch made it clear this hit packed a punch. Aoba instinctively tilted his head to dodge. But those damn hooks were still caught on his clothes, which made it awkward. He narrowly avoided the blow. Only for another fist to emerge from Natsuki's back, striking Aoba hard and sending him flying along with a mess of wires and shuriken. Chapter 70. Kato Megami and Yamashiro Roan didn't cheer or celebrate. Instead, they moved in to surround Aoba once more. They didn't believe for a second that a few moves could take down a special jonin. As long as Aoba-sensei hadn't declared the match over, the fight continued. Aoba stood up quietly, pulling the steel wires off his clothes and retrieving the kunai attached to them. He glanced at it, then gave a rare thumbs up. "You three really surprised me. With just 2 special types of shuriken, you managed to catch me off guard. For genin, that's pretty impressive. But Aoba-sensei did block my punch, didn't he?" Natsuki didn't let his guard down at all. "It was my first time using the 4 demon arms technique, and I launched it while you were still engulfed in the toxic mist. I kept my extra arms hidden until the last second, went for a sneak attack, and yet you still blocked it. If you hadn't, I definitely would have cracked your shades." Aoba brushed the dirt off his flak jacket. "So that ninjutsu with the extra arms is called the 4 demon arms technique? Not bad at all. So, what's next? Still gonna attack? Or are you ready to give up?" "Give up? No way." Natsuki charged in, his fist flying straight for Aoba's face. Aoba raised his hand to block, but the moment his palm touched the fist, he sensed something was off. He immediately switched to guard his lower abdomen and managed to block Natsuki's real strike. The earlier one had passed right through his head like a ghost. It was an illusion. "That clone fusion technique of yours, it was in your file. I'm not falling for that one." Despite his words, Aoba remained cautious. Basic clone techniques were easy to detect, but fused clones that constantly disrupted vision were a different story. Unless you had Sharingan or Byakugan, they were a real headache. And with Natsuki's 4 demon arms, he had 4 real arms and 2 illusory ones. That was 6 fists flying at him, no easy task to defend against. Sure enough, Natsuki unleashed a flurry of attacks the next second. 6 arms striking in a blur, each move faster and fiercer than the last. It was dizzying to watch. If Aoba wasn't so skilled in taijutsu, he'd have been pummeled already. And to make things worse, Megami and Roan weren't just standing around. They kept launching kunai and shuriken for support. While not powerful individually, they caused plenty of trouble and forced Aoba to stay alert. After 10 minutes of non-stop pressure, Aoba was gradually being pushed back. The 3 students kept up the pursuit relentlessly. Still, this only made Aoba more satisfied. He was already thinking about how to nurture these kids. Suddenly, a shuriken thrown by Megami flew toward him. Aoba reflexively dodged, but the projectile burst into smoke, revealing a disguised Natsuki clone that immediately latched onto Aoba's arm. At the same moment, the real Natsuki retreated. Roan began forming hand seals, clearly preparing Katon, Gaki no Jutsu, fire style, great fireball technique. Aoba reacted fast and struck the clone, grabbing his arm, but it poofed into smoke. Another shadow clone. In that instant, Aoba figured it out. After the initial toxic mist shuriken attack, Natsuki must have created a shadow clone. That clone then transformed into a shuriken and was handed to Megami, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. These kids really know how to play dirty. Wait, a SEC shadow clone? Who said Natsuki could only make one clone? That's impossible. Where are the rest? No, this is bad. By the time he realized, it was too late. 3 shadow clones erupted from the ground. One grabbed his legs, one locked his arms, and the third literally climbed on top of him. Right then, Roan finished his hand seals and opened his mouth. Katon, Gaki no Jutsu. Boom. 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 The 3 clones exploded under the blaze. Poof. But Aoba vanished, leaving behind a chunk of wood. Substitution Jutsu. Roan. He's behind you. Megami's sudden shout echoed across the field. Don't underestimate her, she wasn't just good at throwing weapons. Ever since she tossed the clone shuriken, she'd been locking onto Aoba with chakra sensing. She knew exactly where he was, even after substitution. Ha! Sharp little lady, hey? But you're too late. Aoba appeared right behind Roan, raising his arm to bonk him on the head. But whoosh! Natsuki appeared behind Roan in a flash and blocked the strike at the last second. Aoba wasn't surprised. He simply reached out with his other hand and struck the extra pair of arms on Natsuki's back, shattering them on impact. Then he kicked both Natsuki and Roan, sending them flying. Guess who's still stronger in taijutsu? It's still Aoba. The 2 rolled on the ground, then quickly sprang to their feet, positioning themselves protectively in front of Megami and keeping their guard up. Aoba, however, clapped his hands. All right. I've seen enough. No, wait Natsuki, you weren't going all out, were you? You held back to cooperate with your teammates. He turned serious. I'll have a one-on-one with you later. For now, gather around, I'll give you an assessment. The 3 of them exhaled in relief and walked over with smiles on their faces. Especially Roan and Megami, they hadn't expected to hold their own against a special jonin for so long. Even if Aoba was clearly going easy on them, their teamwork had been solid. They didn't totally embarrass themselves. Aoba nodded as he began his evaluation. You 3 are clearly led by Natsuki, and it's obvious the strategy was pre-planned. Well done. Natsuki's command was solid, and both Roan and Megami followed through tightly. Even though Team 9 was just formed, your coordination as genin is already very good. He paused and continued, but you still have clear weaknesses. First Natsuki, you're holding back too much for your teammates. Roan and Megami need to improve their personal strength. Especially you, Roan, your hand seals are too slow. If you had been even a little faster, I wouldn't have had time to use substitution. Roan scratched his head. Come on, Aoba and I. Call me sensei during training. Aoba smacked his cousin on the head. But you've grown a lot. You used to be careless and rough, but now you've matured. Roan chuckled. That's all thanks to our leader. He said we had to surprise our teacher. Well, consider Aoba surprised. Any team leader would have been delighted to get a trio like this. But, wait. Did they call Natsuki leader? Aoba raised an eyebrow and picked up one of the special shuriken. These modified tools, were they your design? Both teammates looked at their leader. It was Natsuki's idea. Natsuki shrugged. I actually made these for my girlfriend. But this morning, I figured we might get tested by our squad leader, so I brought a few along. Looks like they came in handy. Chapter 71. The 3 of them looked at each other, a little speechless. They felt like he was showing off the fact that he had a girlfriend, but they had no evidence. Still, they didn't expect those 2 special shuriken to have been designed by Natsuki. Truly a stroke of genius. Against unsuspecting enemies, they'd definitely have a surprising effect. Roan quickly said, Boss, can you make more of those for us? Megami added, Yeah, boss, those shuriken are really good. We're willing to pay for them. About that. I'll have to ask your Aniki first, Natsuki said with some hesitation. I gave the designs to my girlfriend, and she said she wanted them to be exclusive. If I ask her for more, she'll probably give me a few, but not too many. Roan and Megami exchanged a look. For some reason, they both got the feeling their boss had no say in his own relationship. Still, they hurriedly expressed their thanks. Thanks, boss. We'll pay for them. Aoba didn't want to keep chatting about these trivial matters. Seeing that it was getting late, he spoke up, let's call it a day. As your sensei, I'll treat you to some yakiniku tonight. We'll meet back here tomorrow morning at 8. I'll take you all to pick up your mission. Whoa! Aoba nii/sensei, you're the best. Before long, Team 9 arrived at Yakiniku Q, only to find that other squads had already beaten them there. They saw Asuma flipping through his wallet with a distressed sigh, Shikamaru and Ino looking bored, and Koji happily stuffing his face. Clearly, Asuma had underestimated the consequences of treating his students to barbecue. Yo! Asuma, your Team 10 is here for some yakiniku too. Aoba called out as he approached. With a cigarette between his lips, Asuma gave a dry chuckle. Hey, Aoba! You treating your students too? Be careful. There might be a bottomless pit among them. Meanwhile, Natsuki had already started chatting with Shikamaru, Koji, and Ino. Shikamaru, Koji, Ino, you guys finished early, hey. Well, it's just the first day. Asuma-sensei just tested our abilities a bit and then decided to treat us. Koji's already eating him into bankruptcy, Shikamaru said, watching Asuma's increasingly thin wallet with a trace of pity. Treating a student like Koji to yakiniku? That was just asking for it. He should have gone to Ichiraku ramen instead. At least ramen wasn't expensive, and the broth could fill you up. Koji probably wouldn't have eaten much. Haha, Koji's going to burn through Asuma-sensei's wedding savings. If he ends up single for life, it'll be Koji's fault, Ino laughed without a care. If our sensei's treating, of course I won't let good food go to waste. This is my ninja way. Koji said, even more carefree. You guys. At least think of me for a second. Asuma looked like he was about to cry. Natsuki cast a sympathetic glance toward the unfortunate 35 million Ryo victim. Having a student like that rough luck. Meanwhile, Aoba had already ordered a few trays of meat and motioned for his students to sit. He casually started a conversation. Natsuki, you know Kakashi? When I was at the Hokage's office, he actually praised you. Natsuki nodded. My girlfriend is a student of Gai-sensei. Gai-sensei introduced me to Kakashi-senpai, and then senpai passed on the Hotaki Ry Kenjutsu, Hotaki sword style, to me. Kakashi taught you the Hotaki Ry Kenjutsu? Aoba exclaimed. No wonder he praised you so much. Passing down a family technique like that, it means he really sees potential in you. Looks like you're hiding more strength than I thought. I'll have to spar with you sometime and see how much you've learned. To Aoba's generation, the Hotaki Ry Kenjutsu was a legendary technique. After all, he had joined the academy the same year as Kakashi. Kakashi had graduated after just 1 year, earning the title of genius across the village. And with the fame of the White Fang of Konoha, Sakumo, Aoba couldn't possibly be unaware. What he hadn't expected was for one of his own students to inherit such a technique. Of course, Natsuki brought it up intentionally. It wasn't something that needed to be hidden. Saying it out loud earned him Aoba's respect and would give his suggestions more weight within Team 9 moving forward. Once they sparred one-on-one, Aoba would also get a better sense of his strength, and hopefully stop treating him like an average genin. In the future, when Natsuki made requests like wanting to learn Dakushin Jutsu, mind-reading technique, Aoba probably wouldn't refuse. All in all, the benefits were many. Hey, Aoba nii, is the Hotaki sword style really that amazing? Roan asked curiously, while Megami leaned in to listen. Amazing? It's more than amazing. Aoba praised. You two are still young, so I can't tell you everything. But I'll tell you this, Hotaki Kakashi graduated after only a year, and he became a Jonin at age 12. Meanwhile, your teacher Mi is still a Takubutsu Jonin. Both of them were stunned. That Kakashi-senpai is that amazing? And he passed down his family sword style to our boss. Aoba nodded solemnly. Exactly. So you two better work hard, or Natsuki will leave you in the dust. If you're teamed up with him, you don't want to drag him down, do you? We understand. We'll do our best. Roan and Megami swallowed hard. The pressure was real. Shikamaru and Ino, who had overheard the conversation, didn't dare to interrupt, but glanced at Asuma, who gave them a confirming nod. The two of them were shocked. They hadn't expected someone like Natsuki to be taught such a powerful sword technique. If that was the case, then Natsuki was going to keep getting stronger, maybe even surpass their teacher, Asuma. Would they even be able to remain friends at that point? Even the usually laid-back Shikamaru felt a twinge of pressure. After all, being left too far behind by a friend wasn't exactly a cheerful thought. As for Ino, she found herself a little envious of Tenton. After all, her boyfriend was getting stronger by the day, and even seemed to be getting more handsome too. Koji, on the other hand, was still focused on his grilled meat and hadn't heard a word. Asuma glanced at Natsuki with mild curiosity but didn't think too much of it. Unlike his father, Hiruzen, Asuma wasn't the scheming type. Just then, the door to Yakiniku-Q opened again, and Asuma's eyes lit up. "Kurane, you brought your students too? Come over here, we've got seats." Shikamaru, Koji, and Ino exchanged glances. So that's what's going on. Shino, Hinata, and Kaiba weren't fools either. So that's what's going on. No doubt about it, Kurane was stunning. With her beauty and her figure, it was only natural that Asuma would be interested. Chapter 72. Natsuki didn't really care about whatever was going on between Asuma and Kurane. He just waved and called out, "Shino, you guys are here too. How's it going?" Shino quickly walked over to Natsuki's table, nodded at the others, and replied, "So you're having yakiniku too? Things are going well. Kurane-sensei is a great teacher." "That's good. Our teacher, Aoba-sensei, is really skilled too." The two of them started chatting naturally. After all, they'd been desk mates and close friends for years. No need to be formal. Aoba glanced over at Natsuki again. Natsuki's profile clearly stated that he had good relationships with several shinobi clan's children. It seemed he really was good at socializing. A genius who could also make friends easily. Natsuki's future looked bright indeed. The group quickly finished their yakiniku, and Aoba reminded them one last time of the meeting time and place for tomorrow, then disappeared in a flash. Seeing it was getting late, Natsuki asked Ron to walk Megami home while he himself hurried off to the ninja tool shop. Sure enough, Tenton was already home waiting for him. As soon as she saw Natsuki, she ran into his arms with excitement. Smells like grilled meat. Looks like your teacher treated you guys too," Tenton said, clearly pleased. After all, yakiniku-Q wasn't cheap. For a teacher to treat students on the first day of a newly formed squad showed generosity, definitely the sign of a good teacher. Since her boyfriend had a good teacher, as his girlfriend, she could be at ease. Natsuki nodded to his future father-in-law, then began reporting, "I got assigned to Team 9. My teammates are Yamashiro Ron and Kato Megami. Our Jonin leader is Yamashiro Aoba. Aoba-sensei's from the Intelligence Division, a Takubutsu Jainin. He's not the strongest, but he's skilled in many fields, a real all-rounder. His taijutsu isn't any weaker than Gai-sensei's." It didn't take long for Natsuki to recount the events of the day. The main purpose was to put Tenton at ease. After hearing it all, Tenton nodded. She would have preferred Kakashi to lead Natsuki. After all, she'd seen Kakashi's strength firsthand, but Aoba seemed solid too. And besides, this was the Hokage's arrangement, no one could really question it. Meanwhile, the shopkeeper father-in-law pretended to dust the counter with a feather duster, but he was secretly eavesdropping the entire time. He was even more invested in his future son-in-law's affairs than he thought. "All right, Natsuki, you must be tired. Go take a bath. Want me to help scrub your back?" Tenton said as she playfully shoved him toward the bathroom. "Scrub my back? Really?" Natsuki asked, full of anticipation. "No way. You're both still kids." The shopkeeper roared from the counter. The outburst startled both Natsuki and Tenton. The two of them stuck their tongues out at him in response. Fine, no back scrubbing, but did he have to yell so loud? Though to be fair, he was right. They really were still young. And now that they were entering puberty, taking a bath together just wasn't appropriate. Of course, the shopkeeper didn't know that later that night, Tenton snuck into Natsuki's bed again. Natsuki sighed in a mix of affection and helplessness. "Tenton, you're a young lady now. You really shouldn't be climbing into my bed like this. Don't tempt me into doing something wrong." But Tenton just murmured, "Natsuki, it's been a long time since you've given me an electric jolt." Natsuki couldn't help but laugh and cry. "Didn't you already learn to do it yourself? I want you to help. Pretty please." Okay. Just stop squirming. It's dangerous." The night passed peacefully. Natsuki woke up the next morning refreshed. Thankfully, after the little jolt, Tenton returned to her own room, or he really wouldn't have been able to sleep. He might have ended up heading out with dark circles under his eyes. After breakfast, the couple shared a bite of meat bun from each other's lips and parted ways at the shop entrance. Natsuki soon arrived at the designated meeting spot. Ron and Megami were already there, but for some reason, they both seemed a little shy around each other. He didn't pay much attention to that, instead handing each of them some special shuriken. These had been approved by Tenton, so there was no issue. But the price? Yet, he wasn't going to give them any discounts. At exactly 8 o'clock, Aoba arrived. Not a second early or late, he was impressively punctual. He immediately led the trio to the Hokage's office, where they received their first D-rank mission, wheat harvesting. Ron was dumbfounded. Aoba and isn't this, like, farmhand work? Why would ninjas be sent to do this? Megami was also confused. Yet, Aoba-sensei, how is this even considered a mission? Aoba didn't explain. Instead, he looked at Natsuki. Sighing, Natsuki stepped up. All right, you two. A mission is a mission. Don't complain. Since you're so confused, I'll explain a bit. D-rank missions are mostly village chores. 1. Because there aren't that many dangerous missions to go around. Ninjas still need to earn a living, and D-rank missions are a decent source of income. 2. They help new squads build teamwork and bonds, letting rookies get used to working together. And 3, and this is the most important part, they help us practice disguises. Disguises? They kind of got it, but not really. You two need to start thinking, Natsuki continued patiently. In the future, we might need to infiltrate enemy territory. That means pretending to be locals. And locals have all kinds of jobs. Right now, harvesting wheat is teaching us how to act like farmers so we don't get found out when we're undercover. Got it. Suddenly, it all made sense. Oh. So that's how it is. As expected of boss, you know so much. Natsuki forced a smile. For some reason, being praised by these two didn't make him feel very happy. Meanwhile, Aoba was chilling. He remembered what Kakashi had said, having Natsuki in the team would make things easier. And it was true, he didn't need to say a word. Just throw the issue at Natsuki and let him handle it. After all, Natsuki was the leader of the team. At that moment, Natsuki suddenly turned to him. Aoba-sensei, how about we play a little game? Aoba raised an eyebrow, amused. What kind of game? Simple. You don't go to the mission site right away. Let the three of us go first. We'll disguise ourselves, and then you try to find us. If you can't see through our disguises, we win, and as a reward, you teach us a new jutsu. If we lose, you get to assign a punishment. Deal? Ha, sounds fun. Alright then, you go first. I'll head over in 20 minutes. Aoba found the idea quite amusing. As Natsuki had said, D-rank missions were good chances to practice disguises. And as a teacher, he did need to provide some guidance. This little game would do nicely. It was fun and educational. Natsuki really did make for a great team leader. Aoba could already tell he'd have a much easier time as a sensei going forward. That said, those three little brats seemed to have forgotten one thing. He was a Takubutsu Jainin from the intelligence division. Trying to fool him with disguises? They were way too green. Chapter 73. Rain. Natsuki and his teammates didn't dare to delay. They immediately picked up the pace and rushed toward the mission location. Whether or not Aoba-sensei will teach us a jutsu depends on how hard we work. Make sure to disguise yourselves well and don't get exposed. Natsuki reminded them. Don't worry, boss. It's not like we haven't studied Henge no Jutsu and disguise class before. The two of them were full of confidence now. Unlike earlier when they complained, they were actually excited this time. This was what made missions thrilling. As expected from their boss, he even turned it into a game. And if they won, they'd get to learn a new jutsu. How awesome was that? They were fired up. Victory was a must. Very quickly, the three arrived at the site, checked in with the village representative, and were led to the wheat fields. The field was already bustling with villagers cutting wheat, and even the task assigner picked up a sickle and joined in. After all, wheat harvesting was a race against time. Who knew when it would rain again? Ron observed the villagers for a bit, then used Henshin no Jutsu, transformation technique, to turn into a simple, honest-looking farmer and began cutting wheat seriously with a sickle. Honestly, he blended in pretty well. Megami transformed into a village girl and joined the other women harvesting. Natsuki, however, created 2 Kage Bunshin, shadow clones, and planned something different. By the time Aoba arrived, the wheat field was bustling with activity. It was impossible to tell where the 3 students were at a glance. He only needed one look, though, to lock onto 2 individuals. He walked over and said with a grin, "Your cutting motions are so stiff, no way you're a seasoned farmer. And you, miss, picking wheat with just 3 fingers like you're some noble lady? Come on. Roan, Megami, drop the act." Poof. Poof. Roan and Megami both dispelled their transformations and returned to their original forms, looking completely defeated. They thought their disguises were flawless, but their flaws were glaring. Clearly, they had underestimated the art of disguise. "Boss, it's up to you now, please win for us." Aoba swept his gaze across the field again. He quickly locked onto one farmer who seemed very average. His movements weren't extremely skilled, but they were solid. He even flashed Aoba a goofy smile before lowering his head to continue harvesting. "Natsuki, your disguise is good but your stance is too steady. You look more like a trained samurai than a farmer." Poof. The farmer vanished but Natsuki was still nowhere to be found. Aoba squinted. "Oh? A shadow clone? You actually fooled me." He scanned the field again and locked eyes on a little boy picking up fallen wheat. "You there? You think disguising as a child will fool me?" The little boy tilted his head and blinked innocently. "Mister, what are you talking about? Are you a ninja?" "Mister? I'm such a handsome guy, and you're calling me mister? Don't think playing dumb will work." Poof. The child exploded into smoke. Another shadow clone. Aoba couldn't help but stroke his chin. He had definitely underestimated Natsuki. He looked around again, but still couldn't spot Natsuki. Still, he was a Takubutsu Jainin from the intelligence division, no ordinary ninja. He immediately activated his chakra sensing technique. Soon, he locked onto a weed. One singular weed at the edge of the field. "You brat, you transformed into a weed." Aoba poked the grass with his finger. Poof. Natsuki returned to his original form. He raised his hands. "Yeah, fooling you really is tough, Aoba-sensei." Aoba chuckled. "You think I survived the intelligence division by being easy to trick? Still, that was impressive, definitely better than the other 2. You didn't win, but once the mission's done, I'll still teach you something." Natsuki was surprised but understood. This was Aoba's way of recognizing the effort he put into the game. He quickly bowed. "Thank you, Aoba-sensei." Roan and Megami cheered, "Yay! Aoba nii/sensei, you're the best." After that, the trio quickly finished the wheat harvesting mission. Once they reported back at the Hokage's office, they didn't rush to take another mission. Instead, they followed Aoba to the training grounds. Aoba cleared his throat. "You guys can say what jutsu you want to learn." Roan immediately raised his hand. "Unii-chan. I want to learn Senshyu no Jutsu, scattering thousand crows technique." Megami fidgeted. "I'm water-natured, if possible, I'd like to learn a Suten, water release, technique." Aoba adjusted his sunglasses, noticing Natsuki hadn't spoken. "Natsuki? What about you? I don't know as many jutsu as Kakashi, but I can teach you 1 or 2. Natsuki thought for a moment and glanced at his teammates. Truthfully, he didn't need to learn anything from Aoba. At best, Aoba could teach D or C rank techniques, not much of a boost to him. As for Dakushin Jutsu, mind-reading technique, it was nice, but he didn't need it just yet. The real reason he brought up learning Jutsu, was for his teammates. After all, they were a team. And if the others were too weak, it wouldn't do anyone any good. So Natsuki suggested, "Aoba-sensei, I recommend we teach them Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique, first. Then assign them tree climbing and water walking training. Judging by their current control, their chakra manipulation needs work. Tree climbing and water walking classic training for genin." Roan and Megami were both from minor clans. Their parents were probably just genin themselves, and likely couldn't guide them. Even though Aoba was Roan's clan brother, he was busy. They hardly ever saw each other, let alone received training. The 2 of them opened their mouths to speak but didn't say anything. They didn't fully understand their boss's reasoning, but they trusted him. If he said so, it had to be for their benefit. Aoba was slightly surprised, then smiled. As expected, having Natsuki as a student really would make his job easy. This kid already understood how to look out for his teammates. He nodded. Alright then. I'll teach them Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and assign them tree climbing and water walking training. Natsuki then explained, you've already seen how useful shadow clones are. There's no downside to learning it. And I'll tell you another trick shadow clones can help with training. Their experience gets transferred back to your brain after dispelling. That means if you use them to practice jutsu, you'll learn at twice the speed. Their eyes instantly lit up. Say no more, boss, we're in. Teach us Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. And tree climbing and water walking. To improve chakra control, of course. We get it. With so many benefits, Ron and Megami were now super motivated and eagerly pushed Aoba to start teaching. As for new missions, those could wait. Once they mastered Kage Bunshin, they could do missions way more efficiently. Chapter 74. To be fair, Ron and Megami weren't lacking in talent. It only took them a single day to learn Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique. Afterward, they began using their clones to handle missions while focusing on tree climbing and water walking training, truly putting in the effort. As for Natsuki, he was called aside by Aoba. Natsuki, let me test your real strength now. Show me everything you've got: your self-developed Rokushiki, 6 techniques, Hachiman Tonk, 8 gates, and the Hataki Ry Kenjutsu, Hataki sword style. Come at me with full force, I want to see what level you've reached. He was genuinely curious about his student. After all, if both Guy and Kakashi acknowledged him, Natsuki had to be something special. Natsuki naturally wouldn't let this chance to test himself go to waste. He wasn't planning to use techniques like Uzumaki explosive bullet, but seeing how Hachiman Tonk and the Hataki sword style held up was more than worth it. And whether or not Rokushiki could hold its own against a Jainin Taijutsu also needed real testing. Alright, Aoba-sensei, be careful. I might not hold back properly and accidentally kill you. Hat. Is that confidence or arrogance? Just come at me with everything you've got. The moment Aoba spoke, Natsuki vanished. He used Soru, Shave, to flash behind Aoba with a whip kick tearing through the air, but Aoba's Taijutsu was excellent. He had already anticipated it and leaned aside, dodging as he launched into a quick series of punches. Natsuki countered with Tekai, Iron Body, hardening both fists, and exchanged blows with Aoba, sending numbing shocks through Aoba's arms. Your Tekai punches are seriously annoying. I can't brute force through this. Aoba jumped back to create distance, but Natsuki raised his leg and unleashed a Renkyaku, storm leg, sending a slicing shockwave his way, forcing Aoba to dodge again only to realize Natsuki had already used Sora to close in. Shigen. Finger gun. Pft. 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 His fingers pierced the air like drills. Aoba didn't dare take it lightly. He immediately drew a kunao to block. Clang clang clang. The Shigen strikes were as sharp as iron nails. Fortunately, Aoba's Taijutsu was top-notch. He not only blocked all of Natsuki's attacks but even managed to find openings to counterattack, though Natsuki slipped away each time. This Rokushiki is something else. You've already got 5 of the 6 techniques down for both offense and defense. I've heard there's one more called Jab, Moon Step, which lets you run through the air. I'd like to see that. Just as he thought this, he launched into a sweeping leg kick. Natsuki instinctively leapt, but Aoba followed up with a fierce rush, forcing Natsuki to dodge mid-air with jab. Aoba pushed up his sunglasses, smiling. So this is jab, huh? Running freely through the air, it's as practical as I thought. Guess I'll have to shamelessly ask my student to teach me later. After half an hour, Natsuki had refined his Rokushiki, but still hadn't gained the upper hand against Aoba's combat style. So he took a deep breath. Hachiman Tonk, 3rd gate, Siaman, open. Boom. A surge of energy exploded from him. Even his hair stood up from the chakras surging around him. Although he only opened the 3rd gate, it was enough for sparring, no need to harm himself by going further. Swoosh. He vanished again much faster than before. Aoba didn't dare take it lightly, raising his arms to block, but still got blasted back several steps from the sheer force. Natsuki's speed had reached a whole new level, his figure blinking in and out, practically impossible to track. If Aoba didn't have sharp instincts and vast experience, he would have lost on that very first kick. Hat. Natsuki, you keep surprising me. Aoba smiled brightly, fully focused on the fight now. Natsuki didn't hold back either, leveraging the power and speed of Hachiman Tongue to launch a relentless assault using Rokushiki. For a while, he actually managed to suppress Aoba. But Hachiman Tongue couldn't be maintained long. Even the third gate consumed a lot of stamina. If they kept fighting, Aoba would eventually win. Sensing this, Aoba spoke up. I've got your Rokushiki moves figured out. Even with the added speed and strength from the 8 gates, you won't beat me. Come on, where's your sword? Clang. A short sword was drawn. Lightning danced across the blade and the next second, it was right in Aoba's face. Startled, Aoba barely managed to block, but zzzt. His kunao was cut clean in half, and his shoulder got slashed. So fast. No wonder they say White Fang's swordsmanship is legendary. In Aoba's eyes, even if Natsuki had only mastered 10% of the Hokage sword style, he already had Jonin level strength. If he hadn't reacted in time, Natsuki might have accidentally slit his throat. Then what? He'd become a missing ninja just for killing his teacher in training? Not daring to be careless, Aoba quickly formed hand seals and summoned a flock of crows. Nin, Sansenyu no Jutsu. Ninja art, scattering thousand crows technique. A dark swarm of crows engulfed Natsuki. But Natsuki relied on the speed granted by the 8 gates and maneuvered through the crows like a phantom. His short blade danced with lightning, cutting down dozens of birds in his path, though it was difficult to get close to Aoba. Aoba kept moving outside the crow swarm's radius, wary of Natsuki's Raiden, lightning release. He knew Natsuki's sword wasn't yet fully mastered. If it were, he wouldn't be relying so heavily on Hachiman Tongue for speed. In truth, Aoba's assessment was spot on. Natsuki had only trained in the Hokage sword style for under a year. He understood the essence of the technique but hadn't yet mastered it. Right now, he was only able to make the blade move faster. But his own body wasn't fast enough, so he needed Hachiman Tongue to compensate. The mismatch between his speed and the sword technique meant he couldn't use it to its full potential. Natsuki suspected that Sakumo's speed came from lightning shunshin, lightning instant step, which was why he was so fast. But learning lightning shunshin wasn't easy. He was still studying it. Once he could combine it with the sword technique, he might be even faster than the original. For now, he was barely able to fight Aoba to a standstill. Of course, if he opened the 5th gate or used Uzumaki explosive bullet or sky-piercing spiral kick, he might actually win. But there was no need to go that far. After several hours, Natsuki collapsed onto the ground in exhaustion. Aoba was looking worse for wear too. It was clear Natsuki had pushed him hard. Still, he smiled. To fight me to this level, your strength is already at elite Jonin, maybe even Takubutsu Jonin level. Among Jonin, you're probably the strongest. But you do have a weakness: your combat experience is still lacking. You need more real fights to grow. Natsuki immediately seized the moment. Then I'll rely on you to be my sparring partner from now on, Aoba-sensei. Thank you. Aoba was speechless. This kid just thanked him outright. How was he supposed to say no after that? Chapter 75. Check this FIC, Pokemon, Master of the Rain Team. A few more days passed, and both Roan and Megami had fully mastered tree climbing and water walking. Even on rough, rushing rivers, the two could now run freely across the surface. Their chakra control had clearly taken a big step forward. And the benefits were obvious: future learning of ninjutsu would be twice as effective with half the effort. The two of them were thrilled by their growth and eager to learn even more. After discussing with Aoba, Natsuki made a decision. Megami, since your chakra nature is water, I'll teach you some sudden, water release, techniques, and also 2 techniques from Rokushiki, Jab, Moon Step, and Rankyaku, Storm Leg. That should be enough for you to reach Jonin level. Also, since girls tend to be more meticulous with chakra control, I recommend you learn Iri ninjutsu, medical ninjutsu. Medical ninjutsu. Megami was naturally excited about learning sudden, but she seemed unsure about the suggestion to study medical ninjutsu. While it was true that precise chakra control made it easier to learn medical ninjutsu, that didn't mean she had to learn it, right? Seeing her hesitation, Natsuki decided to persuade her. Actually, having a medical nin in a squad was once a recommendation by Tsunade-sama herself. But after she left the village, it kind of got shelved. That said, wartime data shows that teams with a medical nin have a much higher survival rate. That got Megami's attention. Over the past few days, she'd gradually realized that her role in the team might not be that significant. First, because Natsuki was just that strong. Second, because Roan was improving faster than her. Even though she did better in the chakra control exercises like water walking, she could still see that Roan had greater growth potential. If this continued, she'd be left behind, lucky not to be a burden. But if learning medical ninjutsu could improve the squad's survival chances, she was definitely willing to give it her all. Natsuki struck while the iron was hot. Didn't you ask your parents about it already? Kato Shizun is apparently a relative of yours. Shizun Senpai was Tsunade-sama's assistant, and her medical ninjutsu is incredible. My idea is start with the fundamentals now, and if you ever meet Shizun Senpai, maybe you could become her student. That would make you Tsunade-sama's grand disciple. Tsunade-sama's grand disciple. Megami's eyes lit up. Then I want to learn. No, I will learn medical ninjutsu. Most girls admired Tsunade and many dreamed of becoming like her. Now that she saw a path to that goal, of course she wouldn't hesitate. And Natsuki wasn't just making it up. Since Megami really was related to Shizun, there would be no issue about taking her as a student later. Aoba was surprised. Natsuki, you even know about Shizun? Natsuki nodded thoughtfully. I heard that Kato Shizun Senpai was in the same class as you, Aoba sensei. I did a little digging, and since Megami's related to her, I figured she'd be suited for medical ninjutsu. Aoba nodded slowly, recalling the cute black-haired girl from their academy days. Shizun had been adorable as a kid. Sensei, that smile of yours looks kinda suspicious, Natsuki teased, narrowing his eyes. Were you reminiscing? Or do you have feelings for Shizun Senpai? Hey? Cough. Don't talk nonsense. Aoba quickly straightened up. I was just thinking about the academy days. It's been years since we've seen Shizun. Us old classmates do worry about her sometimes. He sounded a little evasive. Natsuki didn't press further. Anyway, once Tsunade returned as the 5th Hokage, Shizun would come back with her. They'd see soon enough. Next up was Roan. Roan, your chakra nature is fire, but I don't know any katon, fire release, techniques. I can teach you 4 demon technique and Shunshin no jutsu, body flicker technique, which should help. But mostly, you should stick with Aoba sensei. He's your clan brother after all, he won't hold back. Just sponge off him and steal all his skills. Got it, boss. I'll squeeze every last jutsu out of Aoba and II. Roan gave a sharp salute, full of determination. Aoba sighed. His cousin was a bit goofy, but since he was family, teaching him well would help strengthen the Yamashiro clan. After that, the 4 split into 2 groups. Natsuki took charge of Megami, teaching her not only Iri ninjutsu, but also Suten, Mizurappa, water release, wild water wave, Suten, Benki no jutsu, water release, telescope technique, and Suten, Kakyudeky no jutsu, water release, magnifying glass technique. He also gave her Jep and Rankyaku, since they synergized well with water nature chakra. That alone raised Megami's power by several levels. During their breaks, Natsuki would also teach Roan the 4 demon technique and body flicker technique. Megami would watch too whenever she was curious. Raising both teammates' strength made Natsuki feel more secure for future missions. As for the village's D-rank missions, they kept accepting them daily, but shadow clones handled all of them. This way, training and missions went hand in hand. Life was very fulfilling. And just like that, a month passed. One day, Team 9 was assigned a C-rank escort mission leading 10 merchant caravans to the capital of the Land of Fire. Hee. Finally, a mission outside the village. Roan stretched his arms, visibly excited. After a month of training with Aoba and II and Boss, it's time to put it to the test. I wonder what kind of strong enemies we'll run into. Megami immediately threw cold water on his enthusiasm. C-rank missions at most mean roadside bandits. What kind of strong enemies do you think you'll find? Roan deflated. Ah, Megami, can't you just let me be excited for once? What? Got a problem? Nope. No problem. You're absolutely right. Roan scratched his head and gave a sheepish laugh, while Megami crossed her arms proudly with a pout. Natsuki watched all this and couldn't help thinking the two were acting a little suspicious. Especially over the past month, Megami had developed a habit of teasing Roan, and Roan always responded with a silly grin and let it go. Typical bickering couple, and their names even kinda match, Natsuki thought to himself. He could feel the dog food being thrown his way but he wasn't eating it. After all, he wasn't single. Aoba chose that moment to speak up. Alright, you've got 30 minutes to prepare. Meet at the village gates on time. Even though this is just a C-rank mission, don't let your guard down. Sometimes a powerful enemy can appear out of nowhere. Dismissed. He vanished in a blur. Natsuki gave the two of them a meaningful glance then disappeared as well. The two were left staring at each other, both slightly red-faced. Their bosses looked just now, definitely seemed to say he'd figured them out. Chapter 76. Tenton had already gone out on a mission earlier, so Natsuki stopped by the ninja tool shop to greet his cheap future father-in-law, grabbed the pre-prepared summoning scroll, and made his way toward the village gate. On the way, he happened to pass by Team 7 who were chasing a cat. Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura were surrounding a cat, but their lack of coordination left them in shambles as the feline toyed with them effortlessly. Natsuki looked up and saw Kakashi sitting leisurely on the rooftop reading Make Out Paradise, and called out, "Kakashi-senpai, you're looking pretty chill." Kakashi closed his book. "Oh, it's Natsuki. Judging by your gear, heading out on a mission." Natsuki nodded. "Yet, Hokage-sama assigned a mission to escort a caravan to the Land of Fire. I'm heading out shortly." "Oh, then you'd better go. Stay safe." "Bye, senpai." Natsuki waved and jogged off toward the gate. 803. Naruto finally managed to catch the cat, but ended up with a face full of scratches. While in that miserable state, he saw Natsuki run by and realized he had just heard him chatting with Kakashi-sensei. Curious, he asked, "Kakashi-sensei, do you know Natsuki?" Sasuke and Sakura were also intrigued. They had heard the greeting too. "Yet, met him last year." Kakashi reopened his book, speaking nonchalantly, "Natsuki's a lot more mature than you three. He's heading out on a real mission. Unlike you, who can't even catch a cat." "Yar yar. I really envy the instructor of Team 9. "What? Team 9 is doing missions outside the village." The trio instantly panicked. They'd been doing chores for a whole month and were already fed up, and now they heard Natsuki's Team 9 was already taking outside missions? That was unbearable. They protested loudly, "Kakashi-sensei, we want out of village missions too." Kakashi smiled faintly. "Nope. You have to wait for Hokage-sama's orders. After all, it involved the Jinchuriki. Kakashi didn't have the authority. Only the third Hokage could approve that. If anything happened outside the village, no one could take the responsibility. Meanwhile, Natsuki had arrived at the gate. Aoba was leading the caravan and registering with the two gatekeepers, Katetsu and Izumo. Rainya and Megami were already there, excited about leaving the village for the first time. Natsuki was the last to arrive, but since he wasn't late, it didn't matter. TL decided to change the name of Roan into Rainya. Sounds better. However, the merchant didn't seem satisfied. Though they called it a caravan, it was really just a mustached merchant with 4 people, either servants or guards. The mustached merchant saw Natsuki arrive last and couldn't help grumbling, "What kind of operation is Konoha running? I paid good money and they send me a bunch of brats as escorts? What if we run into bandits and they freeze up?" Rainya and Megami immediately glared at him. Aoba remained unfazed. He'd heard worse on missions before. But Natsuki wasn't the type to suffer in silence. He smiled and said, "If this esteemed merchant isn't satisfied, there's still time to change the request. I suggest you spend 1,000,000 RY to issue an S-rank escort mission. Hokage-sama will definitely assign elite Jainin to protect you. So, want to make that change?" "Change, your ass. 1,000,000 RY? What, you think I'm printing money at home?" The mustached merchant turned beet red. Even if he sold every bit of his goods in the capital, he wouldn't make more than 300,000 RY. Only a lunatic would drop 1,000,000 on a mission. But he could tell this brat was mocking him, basically saying, "If you don't have money, shut your mouth." He wanted to snap back, but the look in Natsuki's eyes sent a chill down his spine. Come to think of it, these brats were official shinobi and stronger than his hired guards. He'd be an idiot to keep complaining. He clammed up immediately. Rainya and Megami couldn't help but laugh. That's their captain one line, and that cocky merchant was shut down completely. Even Aoba was surprised, glancing at Natsuki with newfound appreciation. He'd expected an argument, not a precise strike to the weak spot that left the merchant speechless. This personality, not one to suffer losses, but calm, rational, and clever. He was growing more and more pleased with Natsuki. Ahem. All right, let's get going. Natsuki, you take command, Aoba said, handing over the mission leadership. This was all part of nurturing Natsuki. His strength was sufficient, but he lacked experience. The best way to help him grow fast was to let him try leading. Aoba would be there to back him up anyway, so Natsuki could experiment freely. Natsuki nodded and issued instructions. I'll take the front. The caravan follows behind. Rainya and Megami, cover the flanks. Don't get too excited, take turns scouting. Aoba-sensei, you take the rear. You can just enjoy the show. Rainya and Megami chimed in, yet. Aoba nii/teacher, enjoy the show. Aoba adjusted his sunglasses, looking completely laid back. Katetsu and Izumo were surprised. They didn't expect Aoba to hand over full control of the mission. Even though he'd be the safety net, letting a student lead their first out-of-village mission? That took guts. Soon, the group set off. Natsuki led from the front. It was his first time outside the village, and the novelty was real. But honestly, the scenery in the Land of Fire wasn't that different, just fewer buildings and people than in Konoha. Mostly tall trees and forests. Not much to look at. Even Rainya and Megami, initially excited, quickly calmed down and focused on the mission. They took turns scouting. Megami used Suden, Benki no Jutsu, water style, telescope technique, giving her visual range within a kilometer. Rainya summoned a crow for aerial reconnaissance. For now, though, danger was unlikely. They were still close to Konoha, and occasionally passed by other ninja. No bandit or thief would dare cause trouble this close to the village. The real issue was the caravan's slow pace. The merchant barely carried anything himself, while his 4 guards pushed a cart full of goods. And this stingy man hadn't even bought a horse to pull it. After half a day, they hadn't covered much ground. And he still had the gall to complain about young shinobi? Buy a horse first, then maybe we'll get somewhere faster. Natsuki glanced back at the merchant, his displeasure obvious. The mustached man broke into a cold sweat, terrified that this little ninja might suddenly turn around and punch him. All he did was grumble a bit at the gate. Was the kid really still holding a grudge? So petty. The group continued, stopping around noon for a meal and a rest, then continued onward until dusk when they finally encountered a situation. Chapter 77. Boss, 800 meters ahead, there are 10 people hiding on both sides of the road. They're all armed. They don't seem like shinobi, probably bandits trying to ambush us, Megami reported quickly while looking at the lens display. Got it. Natsuki raised a hand to halt the group. He scanned the area himself and confirmed they weren't ninja. Just a bunch of small fry, he said to Rainya and Megami. Wanna play with them? It's been a boring walk so far. Rainya immediately replied, yeah, it's been pretty dull. Boss, Megami, leave the small fry to me. I'll be done in no time. Though, boss, how should I deal with them? Natsuki waved his hand. Just subdue them first. Aoba-sensei can use mind-reading technique later. If they're scum, then we kill them. Killing was inevitable for a shinobi, just a matter of time. So, the 3 of them were mentally prepared. The reason Natsuki didn't ask Rainya to go straight for the kill was simply because he didn't want to murder indiscriminately. Even in a twisted world like this, he refused to become a butcher who disregarded life. Kill when necessary, but spare those who don't deserve death. That was all. It wasn't about being a saint, just his bottom line. Rainya nodded and quickly formed a few hand seals before slapping the ground. Kokiyos no Jutsu, Karasu gun. Summoning technique, flock of crows. This is the scattered Chidori technique my bro taught me. As he spoke, the summoned crows swooped into the bushes ahead, driving the hidden bandits out. The place erupted into chaos. These weren't ordinary crows but summoned beasts. No matter how wildly the bandits slashed at them, they couldn't land a blow. Instead, they were pecked and clawed repeatedly. Rainya dashed forward, and in the blink of an eye, knocked each bandit to the ground with 1 kick each. The whole thing didn't even take 2 minutes. The mustached merchant and his 4 guards swallowed hard. They hadn't expected a 12-year-old ninja to have such skill, taking out 10 armed men alone. And that boy called boss hadn't even made a move yet, he must be even stronger. As for the instructor walking at the rear, well, there was no need to even mention him. They had previously dared to complain about these powerful ninjas. The fact they hadn't retaliated already was mercy enough. They'd better be more respectful from now on. Natsuki smiled. Aoba-sensei, Raine's improving fast, hey. Aoba nodded slightly. He's been working hard. It's only natural that he's made progress. Or maybe he just wants to show off in front of a certain someone. Isn't that right, Megami? Natsuki's teasing remark made Megami blush. She immediately realized he had seen through the situation between her and Raine and shot him a glare. Natsuki simply shrugged. Teasing was fine, but he didn't intend to interfere. Still, he remembered Megami used to be part of the Sasuke fan club. How did she forget about Sasuke so quickly and start liking Raine? Maybe, their names really are fatefully linked? Soon, Raine returned, dragging the 10 subdued bandits behind him. Grinning, he said, "Boss, all done." Then he gave Megami a smug look, as if to say, "See how awesome I am," making her blush again and roll her eyes. Natsuki nodded and looked toward Aoba. Aoba approached the bandit leader, performed a few hand seals, and placed his hand on the man's head. After a short while, he withdrew it. "They're just drifters trying to charge people for passage. Then beat them up and dump them by the roadside." Since Natsuki was primarily in charge of the mission, he had the authority to decide how to deal with them. No one objected. Raine personally gave the 10 bandits a good thrashing before tossing them aside. "All right, keep moving. Once the sun sets, we'll stop and camp by the road." Under Natsuki's orders, the group resumed their journey. But the merchant caravan moved painfully slow, and the sun soon began to set again, forcing the team to stop. If it were just the ninja, they'd have reached the fire capital before nightfall. But they were escorting this slow merchant group who hadn't even bothered to bring horses, so naturally, things dragged out. Still, this was part of being a shinobi. More missions lay ahead, and such situations were normal. Less complaining was better. Besides, field camping was inevitable for future missions, so it was good to get used to it now rather than suffer later in worse conditions. Natsuki took out a scroll and summoned several tents, along with pots and pans. Of course, this setup was for his own team. The merchant group was responsible for their own food and shelter. After all, Team 9's mission was only to escort and protect in dangerous situations, nothing more. And considering the mustached merchant had been rude at the start, there was no need to go out of their way for them. So, while the 5 merchants gnawed on dry rations, they watched enviously as Natsuki's group cooked a hot meal. Later, while the merchants huddled by their cart for the night, Natsuki and the others slept comfortably in tents. They even arranged for night shifts. Otherwise, the merchants probably would have cried. The night passed uneventfully. The well-rested Team 9 looked at the merchants' tired faces and couldn't help but feel a bit of smug satisfaction. These guys called themselves merchants, yet they hadn't even brought tents? Either they were broke or just stingy. And they had the nerve to complain about the shinobi Konoha scent? You can't even spend 800 ryo on yourself, and you expect the Hokage to personally protect you? The rest of the journey went without incident. After all, this was the main road from Konoha to the fire capital. With Konoha shinobi escorting the group, most bandits wouldn't dare make a move unless they were desperate or suicidal. Besides, the merchants' goods were so shabby that they weren't even worth robbing. By evening, the group finally reached the fire capital, officially completing the mission. Team 9 immediately parted ways with the merchant caravan. With night falling, they decided to stay in the city and take a stroll. Truthfully, the mission had been pretty boring. If they hadn't encountered those bandits along the way, they probably could have completed the whole thing while yawning or napping. What Natsuki looked forward to most was just enjoying the city and picking up a few gifts for his girlfriend. Everything else was secondary. Aoba found a cheap inn and kindly said, "The fire capital is quite lively at night. Go out and have fun, but make sure to come back tonight. And remember, we're Konoha shinobi. Don't cause trouble, but don't be afraid of it either. Just don't bring shame to the village." "Yes, Aoba nii/sensei. We're off to play." Chapter 78. Raine and Megami responded immediately and headed out together, clearly off on a date. Natsuki chuckled. "Aoba-sensei, your cousin sure moves fast." Aoba shrugged. "That Raine kid's pretty sharp." When you meet a cute girl like Megami, you better make a move early, otherwise, you'll have no place to cry later. Hehe, yeah, smart move. But what about you, Aoba-sensei? Why didn't you go after Shizune-senpai back then? Don't you think she's cute? Are you crying now with nowhere to go? You little punk! How dare you tease your teacher? Get out and go walk the streets. Aoba kicked Natsuki out the door. Truthfully, he did have nowhere to cry. How was he supposed to know Tsunade-sama would take Shizune with her and disappear for years? Back in their academy class, there were only 3 really cute girls, Kurane, Shizune, and Rin. Rin had already sacrificed herself, Kurane had Asuma pursuing her, and Shizune was missing in action. The guys in their generation were really out of luck. And now Natsuki was rubbing salt in the wound. He deserved a beating. Natsuki slipped into the streets. He had to admit, this was worthy of being the capital of the strongest nation in the ninja world. The Land of Fire was naturally prosperous thanks to its geography, and the capital where the daimyo resided was incredibly lively even at night. Bright lights, laughter, joy. It was as if this ninja world wasn't chaotic at all. Maybe that's just how the ninja world works. Ninja villages can fight each other to the death, but no one touches the daimyo. That would be crossing a line. The daimyo ruled the countries. They had wealth and power. Ninja villages were just military institutions under their command, and generally followed their orders. Even the so-called Great Ninja Wars were more like strategy games the daimyo played with each other. To someone from a unified, strong country, this would be baffling. If a power-hungry nationalist showed up here, the daimyo would be overthrown in an instant. After all, aside from status and money, the daimyo had nothing: no personal strength, no elite armies. When trouble came, they had to rely on the ninja villages. How could someone like that rule a nation? Overthrow them. Overthrow them all. Unify the entire ninja world. Then, take Hinata, Ino, Kurotsuki, Kirin, Mei, all of them. Maybe even Granny Cho if you're ruthless enough. Well, those are the thoughts of ambitious lunatics. Natsuki just found it exhausting. What's the point of conquering a twisted world like this? He had no interest in living that kind of life. Natsuki strolled around the city, bought some trinkets to bring back for Tenton. As for his future father-in-law? No need. Before he left the village, when reporting to his soon-to-be father-in-law, the man said, "Natsuki, do you know how many businesses our family owns? Since you're heading to the fire capital, check out a few shops. Just take it as familiarizing yourself with the family assets." So, during his stroll, Natsuki did find the shops: an inn, a restaurant, a textile store, and more. Forget just familiarizing himself. Next time he'd come with Tenton to really make it official. And since the family already had businesses in the capital, there was no need to buy a gift for the old man. Natsuki didn't have much money anyway, and cheap trinkets wouldn't impress him. But Tenton was different. Even a small gift would make her happy, and show that her boyfriend always had her in mind. With the gifts bought, Natsuki began heading back to the inn. He hadn't walked far when he saw Rainya and Megami in the distance, walking hand in hand. Megami was even feeding Rainya a sausage skewer. Both had sweet, innocent smiles. Yup, just as he suspected. The only problem? The two were so focused on their date that they didn't notice someone following them. Natsuki's eyes narrowed. A figure was stealthily trailing behind them, walking like a trained shinobi. He could even sense faint chakra from them. Who would dare stalk Konoha's ninja? And what was their goal? Natsuki immediately slowed his pace and began tailing the stalker. He followed the stalker all the way to the inn. Rainya and Megami shyly let go of each other's hands and entered the building, while the stalker turned to leave. But just as the stalker turned around, they were startled to see Natsuki suddenly standing right in front of them. Without a word, Natsuki slapped them on the forehead, knocking them out cold. He quickly patted them down and found 10 forehead protectors. Hey? A music note? Otogaku. From Orochimaru. The appearance of an Otogaku ninja made Natsuki cautious. He hadn't paid much attention to Orochimaru before, thinking the Konoha crush plan was still far off. Even if Orochimaru had returned to the village, he would have just been making secret deals with Danzo and not causing trouble yet. But now, it seemed the Chunin exams were approaching, and so was the Konoha crush. So what was this Otogaku ninja's goal in following Konoha shinobi? Just recon? Kidnapping? Assassination? Natsuki couldn't be sure, so he dragged the person back to the inn and knocked on Aoba's door. He also signaled with a special code to summon Rainya and Megami. What happened? Aoba opened the door quickly. Upon seeing the unconscious person in Natsuki's hand, his expression turned serious. Rainya and Megami rushed in and were a bit confused, but they didn't ask questions. They followed Natsuki and Aoba into the room. Aoba used chakra to scan the surroundings and confirmed no one was eavesdropping. Then he turned back to Natsuki. Natsuki pulled out the Otagakuer headband. On the way back, I saw this guy secretly following Rainya and Megami, so I trailed him. When he tried to leave, I knocked him out and found this on him. Rainya and Megami's expressions changed. They didn't expect to be tailed, especially by someone other than Natsuki. Having their relationship exposed was one thing, but being followed by a stranger without realizing it, that was a serious problem. Aoba glanced at his cousin but said nothing. Instead, he took the headband and looked it over. Otagakuer? I heard the land of rice fields established Otagakuer recently. The Hokage was curious but didn't send anyone to investigate. Now one of their shinobi is following ours. What's their aim? That's your job to find out, Aoba-sensei. You can read minds. Realizing he asked a dumb question, Aoba performed some hand seals, placed his palm on the enemy's head, and began reading their mind. A moment later, Aoba's eyes sharpened, and he blurted out. Orochimaru. He quickly shut up, realizing he nearly said too much in front of the students. But his expression had turned extremely serious, his usual relaxed demeanor completely gone. Chapter 79. Anarchy. Rainya spoke with unease in his voice. Aoba tried to compose himself before saying, "This is no small matter. You two shouldn't have known about it. I'll report this to the Hokage. This man must be brought back to the village." As he spoke, he took out a rope and securely tied up the Otagakuer ninja, wrapping his mouth tightly with a cloth. The severity of the situation only made Rainya and Megami more anxious. To shift their attention, Natsuki scolded them, "You two can date, but don't get so carried away that you don't notice someone tailing you. That little relationship of yours, me and Aoba-sensei saw through it long ago. No need to keep pretending. As punishment, all the D-rank missions when we get back are yours." "Got it, Anarchy," the two mumbled, heads lowered in embarrassment and frustration, not daring to protest. Aoba nodded in approval at Natsuki's approach. Natsuki didn't ask too many questions, nor did he let Rainya and Megami ask more either. After all, this wasn't something genin should be involved in. Just to be safe, the four of them decided not to separate for now. "Tonight, stay in my room. First thing in the morning, we'll rush back to the village." Urgency flickered in Aoba's eyes. "Aoba-sensei, my Kukiyos no jutsu, summoning technique, calls a mountain giant eagle that can carry up to 7 people and flies really fast. How about we ride it back to the village tomorrow?" Natsuki was worried that Orochimaru might still be in the capital of the Land of Fire, so the sooner they returned to the village, the better. Although his current strength allowed him to exchange blows with Orochimaru, and teaming up with Aoba might give them a fighting chance, they were still outside the village with no reinforcements, and with Rainya and Megami not being strong enough, facing an S-rank missing nin was just too risky. Avoiding conflict was clearly the better choice, and it was obvious Aoba thought the same. As for the giant eagle summoning beast, Natsuki and Tenton had already signed the contract scroll long ago, after someone answered the bounty they posted through the bounty exchange. Natsuki had even communicated with the eagle a few times, but hadn't dared fly it around the village before. It turned out that contracting a giant eagle had been a forward-thinking move. Now was exactly the time to use such a convenient transportation method. As for who provided the scroll, Natsuki had good reason to suspect Kakuzu. After all, the bounty Tenton had offered was quite substantial enough to make even someone with 5 hearts tempted. A mountain giant eagle summoning beast? That works. We'll leave it to you tomorrow, then. Aoba had no objections. He needed to return to the village as soon as possible and report what he had read from the enemy's memories. Early the next morning, the group checked out and left the city immediately. Just outside the city, Natsuki bit his thumb, quickly forming hand seals before slapping the ground. Kukiyos no jutsu. Summoning technique. Boom. A massive eagle appeared out of nowhere. The oppressive aura made everyone hold their breath, and the dust stirred up by its wings made it hard to breathe. The Otagakuer ninja had just regained consciousness and promptly fainted again at the sight. Caw. The eagle let out a long cry in greeting to Natsuki. Despite its size, The eagle couldn't speak. Only those who had signed a contract with it could understand its intentions. Natsuki leaped onto its back. Birdra, take us back to Konoha. Birdra, the name Natsuki had given it, inspired by the mighty Digimon, Bird Ramon, when he saw how majestic and fire-breathing it looked. Fortunately, the eagle wasn't displeased. In fact, it seemed rather happy to have a name. Aoba and the others grabbed the unconscious Otogakure ninja and climbed aboard. It was only when they were on its back that they truly realized how enormous the eagle was. If not for weight limits, they could have brought a few more people along. Whoosh! With a beat of its wings, Birdra shot into the sky. Everyone's hair was whipped into disarray. But no one could deny the speed. Within 2 or 3 hours, Konoha's outline was already visible below. Natsuki instructed Badara to land a kilometer outside the village. The eagle was simply too big. If it landed too close, it might be attacked. Once they dismounted, Aoba finally let out a breath of relief. All right, follow me back to the village. After that, you're dismissed for a day of rest. If anything comes up, I'll notify you. Natsuki waved to Birdra. You can go back for now. Next time, Tenton will prepare some delicious beef for you. Birdra let out another cry before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Team 9 didn't linger. They picked up the pace and rushed to the village. At the gate, the 2 guards called out, Aoba, you're back already? That huge eagle just now was. I'll report to the Hokage. Natsuki, register your return. Aoba cut them off, then vanished with the Otogakure ninja. The guards looked at Natsuki and the others, but he said nothing, only gestured for them to handle the paperwork. Then Team 9 disbanded and headed home. Inside the Hokage's office, Aoba placed the Otogakure ninja on the floor, his voice urgent. After we arrived in the capital of the Land of Fire, Rainya and Megami were followed while walking around town. Fortunately, Natsuki spotted the stalker in time and captured him. I used mind-reading technique to read his memories and confirmed that he is indeed from Otogakure and that the village was founded by Orochimaru. Nani? Orochimaru. Hiruzen shot up in shock. No wonder Otogakure has been so mysterious. It's actually a village created by Orochimaru. The elderly third Hokage muttered, suddenly looking uneasy. He couldn't quite understand Orochimaru's motive, but his instincts told him the man was up to something. Otogakure had been established in the land of rice fields, which bordered the north of the Land of Fire. Now, with one of their ninja tailing Konoha shinobi, they were clearly planning something. Aoba, why was he following our people? Hiruzen pressed. According to his memories, Orochimaru intends to launch an operation against Konoha. He ordered surveillance on our shinobi. This guy had been assigned to lie low in the capital and started tailing us after spotting me with Team 9 yesterday. He appeared to be acting alone, no sign of teammates. Aoba's face remained grim. Operation? What kind of operation? Unclear. There was no information in his memories. He genuinely didn't know. That uncertainty was exactly why Aoba had rushed back to report. Orochimaru, once one of Konoha's Sunin, knew the village inside and out. If he was truly plotting something, then Konoha was in serious danger. They had to start preparing immediately. Chapter 80. Hiruzen continued questioning Aoba in detail, including Natsuki's summoning contract with the mountain giant eagle. However, he didn't dwell too long on that point. His focus remained squarely on Orochimaru. Until they figured out what Orochimaru was planning, Konoha would remain dangerously passive. Once he'd gathered enough information, Hiruzen dismissed Aoba. He then sent the ANBU to summon Homura and Koharu for a meeting. As for Danzo, Hiruzen deliberately chose not to call him. He suspected that Danzo might still have ties to Orochimaru. Whatever Orochimaru was plotting might very well have Danzo's fingerprints on it. The Otogakure ninja was handed over to the interrogation division, in hopes they could extract more intel. Homura and Koharu arrived quickly. But before the meeting began, the door slammed open. Danzo barged in uninvited. Hiruzen, you've already disbanded Root. Fine. But now you're holding meetings without inviting me? Do you no longer see me as a Hokage advisor? Or are you planning to abandon Konoha's shadow completely? Danzo questioned him sharply, clearly furious. Hiruzen calmly exhaled smoke, then replied, you still have secret dealings with Orochimaru, don't you? One sentence and Danzo almost crushed his cane in anger. Hiruzen, are you accusing me? Hiruzen remained silent, simply staring at Danzo. But the look in his eyes said it all. He wasn't just suspicious, he was convinced, even without evidence, that his old comrade still had private ties to that rogue disciple. Homura and Koharu understood. It was clear now the meeting was about Orochimaru. No wonder Danzo hadn't been summoned. Danzo gritted his teeth. It's been a long time since I last had contact with Orochimaru. That much, I can promise. And I am still a Hokage advisor. I have the right to participate in this meeting. I'm suspending your authority for now, Hiruzen declared. This concerns Orochimaru. We need to proceed with caution. You'll regret this, Hiruzen. I am the Hokage, Danzo. Bang! Danzo stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Hiruzen sat quietly for a while, puffing on his pipe. Only then did he speak, voice low and heavy, Homura, Koharu. It looks like Orochimaru is about to make a move. Meanwhile, Natsuki had returned to the ninja tools shop just in time to run into Tenten, who'd already completed her mission and now wore an anxious expression. Natsuki, I just heard Berdra's cry. Did something happen? She looked him over, only relaxing once she confirmed he was unharmed. Natsuki pulled her inside the store. Don't worry, it's nothing serious. I'll explain everything slowly. Oh right, I brought you a small gift from the capital. He took out a bunch of little trinkets, mirrors, combs, jewelry, and so on. Tenten didn't usually go out of her way to dress up, but like any girl, she still enjoyed pretty things. When she wasn't on missions, she liked to wear a few accessories here and there. I love it. Thank you, Natsuki. She smiled sweetly and gave him a quick kiss. Natsuki felt a wave of bliss only to suddenly feel a heavy, resentful stare from his soon-to-be father-in-law. He quickly offered an explanation, ahem. At-san, since our family has business in the capital, I figured you'd already be super familiar with everything there. You probably wouldn't be interested in the little trinkets I brought, right? Humph. Damn right. Who cares about the junk you brought back? Judging by his tone, he was clearly not happy. Did he want a gift too? Tenten leaned in and whispered with a smile, he's mad, can't you tell? Whether the gift is good or not doesn't matter. What matters is you forgot to get him one. That's the problem. It's about the gesture, not the item. Dad's just being tsundere. If the son-in-law doesn't bring him a gift, of course he's upset. Ah, that's what it was. Natsuki smacked his own forehead. He still had a lot to learn about interpersonal relationships. Thankfully, Tenten was thoughtful. She secretly took out 2 of her gifts, picked the ones suited for men, and quietly passed them to Natsuki with a wink. Natsuki instantly got the hint and walked over to the counter. Ahem. At-san, I was just teasing you. Here's your gift, some little items you can use to decorate your room. Don't be too picky, okay? The store owner glanced at them, snorted, and took them. Your taste in gifts is trash, but I'll accept them, just this once. Next time, pick something better. This father-in-law was harder to please than the girlfriend. Natsuki looked like he was about to cry, while Tenten cheekily stuck out her tongue behind her dad's back. That night, after dinner, Tenten sneaked into Natsuki's room while her dad wasn't looking. She claimed she needed Natsuki to charge her with some electricity, but really, she just wanted to hear all about his first mission outside the village. Naturally, the mission itself was boring and done with quickly. So Natsuki focused instead on the part about Rainya and Megami dating and the Otagakure ninja who had followed them. Otagakure is a recently established village in the land of rice fields. We don't have any solid intel on it yet. But Aoba-sensei accidentally let it slip. He said the name Orochimaru. So I'm guessing Otagakure was founded by him. Orochimaru is one of the Sunin who defected from Konoha. He's extremely dangerous and worse, he knows Konoha and the Land of Fire like the back of his hand. If he's really plotting against the village, it could be very bad. Tenten's brows furrowed deeply. She had always admired Tsunade and wanted to become a legendary kunoichi like her. But after learning that Jiraiya was a pervert and even Tsunade was a gambler, she'd already started feeling disillusioned. Now this one of the 3 legendary Sunin was a traitor planning to attack Konoha? What the hell was going on? Natsuki, the village will be okay, right? She asked, genuinely worried. That's hard to say. But I'll make sure to protect you and At-san. He held her close and added, Tenten, if you ever encounter Orochimaru, don't hesitate, use your trump card immediately. If you get the chance, summon the giant eagle and fly away. Orochimaru's no joke. You can't handle him yet. Understand? Tenton nodded with a grave expression. She didn't want Natsuki to worry. Still, Natsuki couldn't rest easy. Orochimaru was far too dangerous. Just because he knew the plot from the original story didn't mean he could be complacent, especially now that events were diverging from the original. He had to stay alert. Kabuto passed by while I was out shopping. I don't think that was a coincidence. I'm probably on his list. Maybe all of Team 10's rising stars are under observation. As this thought crossed his mind, Natsuki summoned 3 senzu beans with a flick of his will and placed them in Tenton's hand.
Thanks for listening.